That's why Catherine gets paid the big bucks, folks. Yeah, can you hear me? I got Susan's attention now. I said, you weren't a very good student in school because the teacher would be talking to you and you'd just be yammering away and carrying on. Yeah, that's what makes you such a great grassroots advocate, Susan. You just well, welcome to the International Dark Skies Association annual meeting. Catherine Gator in the back there tells me we are live and streaming, so I don't know if anybody in Antarctica can see us, but hello down there. How many are we worldwide, Catherine, on YouTube? We're everywhere. So, you know, guard your remarks. Don't say anything too snarky here. But welcome to IDA. It's so wonderful to see so many old faces or frequent faces, but new faces as well. And just wanted to say that it's folks like you that make the world go round. It's our grassroots individuals working day in, day out to protect our night skies. And as the executive director of this amazing organization, it's such an inspiration to me to have your passion and your love and your commitment around this shared and common cause. I'm going to have Deanna Umpier, whose name I can never pronounce correctly. She'll correct me when she comes up here. We have a few board members here who I'd like to call out and have them stand up for just a second so that we could recognize them. I know Connie, stand up. Kelly, are you still here? Kelly? Kelly Beatty? There he is, Kelly Beatty. Ken Katner, come on, Ken, you get some shoes. All right, who did I, Krissa, are you here? Krissa, there she is. Yay. We just had an amazing board meeting, and I'm always reminded that these folks, just like you, they don't bring a paycheck home from working for IDA. They give of their time and their passion and their love just because they believe in what we're doing. And it's always, again, such an inspiration for me to see the volunteerism that comes through 24 hours a day. So thank you, board members here and board members who aren't able to attend. So I'm going to stop yammering here. I'm going to have Deanna come up to say a few introductory remarks, but I just want to welcome everybody. It's going to be a great, great meeting. Staff have worked really hard to pull it all together. Hopefully everybody has their little ribbons and whatnot, your tags and whatnot, and Susan will help you outside there. We'll be around. We're going to love to talk and yammer and have a good time, so welcome to Boston. All right, Deanna.
Well, I always have to do this, something about my wonderful, I'm a hobbit. So thank you, everybody, for being here. And by the way, if you don't know how to pronounce my name, it's Diana Umpierre. So I expect you all to learn to roll your R's by the end of the AGM. Okay. Umpierre. There you go. I give you a B. Okay. So with that said, I'm really glad. I didn't quite know how to get introductory remarks, so I have to really thank Jonathan March, wherever you're sitting, because he gave me really what is really the perfect quote to get things started. So I like to read that. It is based on a book by Henry Beston called The Outermost House, A Year of Life on the Great Beach of Cape Cod. And this is a quote. Our fantastic civilization has fallen out of touch with many aspects of nature, and none more completely than with the night. With lights and ever more lights, we drive the holiness and beauty of night back to the forest and the sea. The little villages, the crossroads even, will have none of it. Are modern folk perhaps afraid of night? Do they fear the vast serenity, the mystery of infinite space, the austerity of stars? Having made themselves at home in a civilization obsessed with power, which explains its whole world in terms of energy, do they fear at night for their dull acquiescence and the pattern of their beliefs? Be the answer what it will. Oops. Okay. Be the answer what it will. Today's civilization is full of people who have not the slightest notion of the character or the poetry of night. who have never even seen night. Yet, to live thus, to know only artificial night, is as absurd and evil as to know only artificial day. So with that said, we named this conference for a particular reason. We call it Reclaiming the Night. It isn't just about the night sky. It's about the entire nocturnal environment that we face. So we developed a program that I hope you truly will enjoy and take advantage of the entire 3 days. Besides some technical aspects of policy and technology that we'll explore tomorrow, we thought it was a great idea to start today by telling success stories, telling people out there who either are working, as a consultant or as a grassroots activist, what is going on so that they can inspire to change. Tomorrow we'll dive deeper into some technical aspects of different ways of things and explore those. And then I hope as many of you as possible stay until Sunday, when we will explore two things that are really important. Is one, how do we grow in diversity, in the many different ways of looking at diversity? How do we become more intentional? And next year will be 30 years of IDA. And we like to start talking about what do we want the next 30 years to be. And you can all help to shape that conversation. So I hope you stick around. So thank you so much. And Kelly, wherever you are, or Ken, actually, who's the first one to do the? Okay. So Ken, I'll let you come and introduce the first panel today.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ken Katner. As you saw, I'm on the board of directors at IDA, and I have the great honor to moderate this next panel, or our first panel, Inspiring Change in Your Communities. But before I ask the panelists to come up, we wanted to announce a certificate of appreciation, and Connie Walker, another one of our board members, is going to do that.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have the great pleasure of handing out on behalf of IDA an award or a certificate of appreciation to a particular individual that really truly deserves this. Because we always consider, how do you get the younger generation involved in this cause, right? How do you, what do you do? But this person was actually pretty much a self-starter, and let me explain a little bit why. During the spring break in March of 2015, Royu Lee, a student at the University of Arizona, asked me some questions about protecting the night sky. What was that all about? From light pollution. And since he was from China, I kind of put two and two together and said, you know what, we should really put him together with this wonderful person, a really, truly dark skies advocate over there named Xiaohua Wang, or Wang Xiaohua. And the thought was that when Royu went home in the summertime to China, that he could help Xiaohua in his mission to create starry night parks, they call them, and also, control of light pollution. So, and then a week later, after I had met him, he bumps into John Barentine from IDA, and how is that? I mean, everything, it all worked out, and he learned about IDA and how that could become part of everything. And Xiaohua was actually starting to work with IDA as well. So yes, Royu went back that summer and worked with Xiaohua, doing some great things. Went to this IAU meeting, which is the the overlord to all astronomy meetings in the world, and went with him to China, to Hawaii, to go to that meeting, and attended another light pollution session, 3-day session there, and the ball just got rolling, and it's so wonderful when all the stars align, So Royu has shown incredible initiative. At such a young age to take on saving our night sky with such fervor and dedication, and so proactively. And for all these reasons, the IDA staff and the board of directors would like to honor him by presenting him with a certificate of appreciation and the hope that he will continue his efforts well into the future. And thank you very much. So Royu, come on up.
Thank you, Connie. This time, let's have the panelists for this session come on up. And while they're coming up, I'm put some name cards out for them.
Now, if we sit up here, we won't be able to see each other's.
No, you can come. You can come to the front. Oh, you need to adjust that.
Good to meet you.
Where's Roy U? There's Roy U. And Roy U's going to come up here in a moment. He's replacing Susanna in the program. You have a question? Okay, thank you. So before we begin, however, I'd like to point out our sponsor for this session, Your True Nature. Thank you to Your True Nature for sponsoring this session. Your True Nature began creating eco-friendly products and programs in 1993, and they've been a proud sponsor of IDA since 2010. So please be sure to pick up a few of their advice from a street lamp postcards that are outside in the lobby. They were made especially for this year's AGM. So in today's session, we're going to be hearing from each of the panelists, and then after they've all presented, we'll have accepting questions from the audience. So think of some questions that you might want to ask as they go through their presentations. Because of our limited time frame, though, we'll be letting the speakers present their presentations prior to questions, and we'll hold the questions to the end. So each presentation will be about 13 to 15 minutes. And you're welcome to use the podium, or you can do it from where you are seated. All right, so I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have Cynthia Lapp from our IDA chapter, Starry Skies, Lake Superior. Next is Diane Knutson from our IDA Rapid City chapter. And Diane's a new incoming board member for the IDA this year. And Susan Harder is the chapter leader for our IDA New York chapter. And finally, Royu Lee, who just received the Certificate of Appreciation. He's from the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation and the Dark and Starry Sky Committee. All right, so our first speaker is Cynthia, and she's trained in human ecology and studio art and with a master's degree in landscape architecture. Cynthia is a partner in a design-build firm that specializes in custom residential and commercial products. In her local IDA chapter, Starry Skies Lake Superior, Cynthia handles communication, event coordination, and design. So without further ado, Cynthia.
Okie dokie. Yep, it's up there. Hi, everybody. Sorry. Great. So, oops, the other way. So I'm going to cover who we are as a chapter, our history in Duluth and around our region, an event we put on in September, Celebrate the Night Sky Week, and the challenges and opportunities that we're having. And that's Duluth right there, the little, where the pin is. And of course, you recognize Lake Superior and the rest of the Great Lakes, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario. Ken just covered that part. I'm also here with my partner, Randy Larson. Randy, can you raise your hand? Because he is also available for all kinds of questions and things. He's been a design build contractor since 1978, custom building, interested in night skies from a human meeting perspective. He grew up sailing on Lake Superior, and I grew up spending summers with my grandparents on a lake where you could see the Milky Way all the time. And I remember the first time I met someone who'd never seen the Milky Way before. She was in her 60s, and she looked up and she said, "What's that thing in the sky?" And I was like, "The thing in the sky? there's a lot of things up there. But she hadn't seen the Milky Way before. She said, oh, I thought they just called it that. And that was one of the things I was like, oh, there's something to this. People need to see the star thing. Randy read Dave and Owen's New Yorker article in 2007 and started meeting with the city. Randy and I started working together in 2011, and we called it Dark Sky Duluth. Right across the river from us is Superior, Wisconsin, and we didn't know anyone in Superior yet to work on this. We're like, we can't even call it like Twin Ports. We were kind of shy. We're like, Dark Sky Duluth. And then we got IDA chapter status, working with 2 other people. So we have a pretty small group still. But we had a lot of, there's an astronomy club, we had a lot of interest. And so one of our friends, Tom Nelson, put together a spectrometer that attaches to a regular digital camera. So we started doing some color spectroscopy of existing and some of the new street lamps they put in and things like that. We started talking to the city more about what was going on. People started knowing that we were doing things, and so they would start asking for presentations. So we did presentations throughout Minnesota, different cities. We presented to the IES, which was a little nerve-wracking, talking about light to lighting engineers. But that was great. There was a lot of things I'd never thought about before with dark sky. We kind of talk about, we know this from building technologies and things, we're right in the center of the country, and we're connected with the Great Lakes, but we kind of think that things come to the coasts here, like 20 years maybe after Europe or Asia, and things come to Minnesota about 20 years after that. So people had never even thought about light pollution where we were, and so it was a really new topic. And the general response was, this is complicated, we need more information. So we scheduled a night sky seminar for this year, and we started working on that. And so within that, people started saying, dark skies sound really ominous. So we changed our name to Starry Skies, and we started talking about celebrating the night sky. Instead of having a seminar on light pollution, we're like, how can we broaden this out? And our first presentation that we were trying to schedule besides the seminar couldn't do it on the same day as the seminar, and then we thought, well, we should do a whole week, because what if you have a star party and it's dark? If you have one night, it's a crapshoot. So we were like, let's do it over a whole week. So we started planning everything, and then this is where the scale jump happened. It's like, well, if we're Starry Skies Duluth, but we really need to include the whole region. So here's some pictures of the region here. So this is Lake Superior again. This is Duluth Superior. So the big light bombs on Lake Superior. Duluth and Superior, Thunder Bay, Ontario, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and Ontario together. That's actually Marquette, Michigan right there. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. And we're affected by the light pollution from Minneapolis and Chicago. That's what this is all going on up here. So here's a close-up. We're just this way from where the map is. So we're based here. So as you can see, this may be Bortle scale 1. So we are in a relatively really dark part of the country. And an astronomer, Astro Bob, if anybody's ever read his blog before, Bob King, says that we are on the shore of an ocean of darkness. We are a day's drive from Chicago. And within a little ways out of Duluth Superior, we have Bortle Scale 2. So it's a pretty spectacular place already, but we just want to make it more spectacular, not less spectacular. Here's a regional example of how big Lake Superior is. So we're here in Boston, and this is southern Chesapeake Bay. So the total population around the lake is only about 630,000. It's about 350 miles long. It's 10% of the world's fresh water. Here's a picture. It's reaching basically from, Mexico down to San Francisco. It's 30,000 cubic miles of water. And if you can't visualize that, visualize this. Is anybody here from South America? No. Oh, yes! Where are you from? Colombia. Yay! Colombia. If you take all of North and South America and you cover it in 1 foot of water, that's how much water is in Lake Superior. So it's kind of a special place. Oh, and then sorry, whoa, help. The distance from Duluth to the Atlantic, which is, I'm gonna go back a couple slides, all the way here out to the St. Lawrence Seaway is about 2,300 miles. So it's pretty far. If you've ever been to Nepal, we're kind of similar. Fewer mountains. And that's an important part. 2 major ports, 3 major ports, 7 minor ports, 3 states and 1 province. So it's kind of a big area to take on, but we're up for it. So we changed our name to Starry Skies Lake Superior. We called it Celebrate the Night Sky Week. We got a great group of people to come and talk. We have astronomers and a lighting engineer and a national birding expert. Somebody from the National Park Service, Li Wei Hong, came and did readings in our area. Archaeoastronomy, circadian rhythm. We kind of tried to cover everything. It was great. So we started getting sponsors. We got more sponsors. We got great press coverage. This was like, the interesting thing is like, to make it successful is to market across all platforms. And so we were marketing to the new generation that only looks at things on Facebook, and they were surprised we didn't have an Instagram feed set up yet and everything. And then other people who said, we don't ever look at the computer, don't you have a sheet printed off of all 16 of your events? So it was really a challenge to market on all the different platforms, but it was pretty successful. We also sent out a letter to all the leaders, community leaders around the lake, which includes cities and townships and Native American nations and reserve communities. We had a great turnout. We had a great schedule. We had a lot of events. We had about 90 people come to the seminar. We had about 750 people come to our events. The combined, I think Duluth and Superior together is about 120,000 people, so we don't have it's not like a huge audience to pick from. But mostly the great thing we liked about, we had a great turnout with medical and engineering and city government and architecture and design and interested citizens. People came, and tourism. And people came from about 2 hours away to the north and the east of us, up and down the shore. So we figured out it was a really good place to start. People want to look at street lighting, residential lighting, astrotourism, education, enforcement of codes, and they want to have another party next year, which is great. So the opportunities coming up where we are is the Duluth Superior mayors, which are right here, Duluth and Superior. They want to do a Starry Sky Park, Inspiration, the Headlands Park. Yay, go Headlands. City Duluth planning is kind of been, is really challenged by all of this, of course, by like a lot of planning departments are. They would like assistance with lighting, understand circadian rhythm research. There's hardly any code enforcement. The challenge in Minnesota is that the lighting code is with the building code inspectors, and they generally don't know anything about lighting, or not much about lighting, and they don't work at night. So that's a huge challenge. Shielding and changing, changing the color lensing of 4,000 Kelvin lights if they can't replace them, that kind of thing. And then we have many entities in our city that are taking care of street lighting. We have state, county, University of Minnesota Duluth is a different entity. The utility contractor in town is different than the city. So there's complexity there. The National Forest, Superior National Forest, wants us to work with them on a designation. And there is a wilderness area right here, Boundary Waters Canoe Wilderness Area, that's adjacent to Quetico State Park. They're looking at some kind of designation. State forest units are looking at it. Various municipalities are interested in it. Other people in the state want to start chapters. That's why Jessica's here. Yay. And we're interested in doing a circadian rhythm research center in Duluth. So our future vision is getting a grant, because we all did this as volunteers, and this was a lot of work, and we have a lot of coordinating we can already do, and so we're looking at doing an operational grant, be the local contact for IDA stuff going on, doing lighting and instrumentation for code assistance, and advising manufacturers on low light fixtures. We have a lot of snow reflectivity. We've actually had snow on the ground now already for 3 weeks. So we have a whole different situation with that half of the year. Advising municipalities on shielding color and have fun. And so here is, we get the Northern Lights. Oh, I meant to explain on the first, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back through all the slides. But this is over a lake, near Lake Superior. But I totally forgot to tell about the first slide. This is Duluth and Superior. This is our port area. We have a lot of international shipping and lake shipping there. And so we have a lot of reflectivity. And as you can see, the Northern Lights visibility stops right where our light pollution starts. So that's something we're really working on ameliorating. And that's it for me.
All right. Well, thank you.
Oh, well, one more thing. We also started a Starry Sky neighborhood thing, and this you can put anywhere. Oh. Sorry. Cancel. Those were the stars calling us. We have this neighborhood thing that we developed, and we can actually use this anywhere. And we brought a bunch of cards if you guys want to grab one. But this is our little logo, but it says Starry Skies Neighborhood. So if people are interested in, the biggest question we get in the Midwest is, how do I tell my neighbors about their horrible lights? And so putting one of these in your windows is a good way to start.
All right, thank you, Cynthia. Our next speaker is Diane Knudsen, and she's from our IDA Rapid City chapter. Diane created the Lights Out movement in Rapid City, South Dakota. Originally from Nebraska, Diane graduated with a Bachelor's of Science degree from the University of Nebraska and a Master's degree from the University of Iowa. Diane worked as a National Park Ranger at Wind Cave National Park as well. Let's welcome Diane.
Welcome, I'm from Rapid City, South Dakota, area of 70,000 people, and I am going to cover 3 main topics. The ins and outs of hosting a Dark Sky Festival, ideas for locally funding dark sky efforts, and speaking out for lights out in your community. To begin, about a Dark Sky Festival. We are in the 3rd year of hosting our Dark Sky Hour. We began by picking a date that is in April because it falls within the week and the weekend of the International Dark Sky Week, International Astronomy Week, and Earth Day. This year is going to be our kickoff for the Earth Day Expo in Rapid City, and it's a Friday night kickoff on April 20th. At 7:00 p.m. we have an hour worth of programs, and then at 8 o'clock, we do a Dark Sky Hour that ends at 9 o'clock. We have the city's lights actually turn off in a district of downtown that includes a main street in Rapid City, and the lights go out for the full hour. It's approved by our mayor, and he's a former police chief of the city and tells the administrators what section of the grid to turn out at night. We also include the Rapid City Sustainability Committee that helps in planning the kickoff and for the Earth Day Expo, which includes the Saturday and Sunday event. For programming, we invite the National Park Service. We have 2 parks nearby. One is Wind Cave National Park, where I'm a former park ranger, and the Badlands National Park, they both come out and do dark sky activities on vendor booths. Wind Cave will educate on nocturnal animals, one of which is the endangered black-footed ferret, and talks with the attendees about why is it important to have a nighttime environment for nocturnal animals. The Badlands National Park Ranger will talk more about the stars and the astronomy festival that they have each year at the park. Then we invite our Black Hills Astronomical Society to come out, and they provide different telescopes that you can do some viewing. And we have the South Dakota Space Grant Consortium that shows the viewing as well through telescopes with kids can look at planets, moons, stars, points of interest in the sky that they can't see with the naked eye. We include the Black Hills Raptor Center. They bring out their owls that can interact with the kids and adults alike, love interacting with the nocturnal owls. We also partner with the World Wildlife Fund, and they help fund part of it and provide volunteers to work booths as we have common objectives. And we also get information from our museums that have vendors that provide activities and booths at the event. The City Council provides a proclamation that is made by the mayor, and he has a City Council representative read the proclamation during the kickoff of the event, showing the support. We are working on our program for this year for April 20th, which will include our Lakota Star Knowledge presentation by Craig Howe. And he's going to talk about the cultural importance and the stories of the Lakota Star Knowledge with a video, DVD, and a presentation that he'll provide. The other activity that we do at the event and leading up to the event is asking for lights out pledges. Our goal for this year is to collect 10,000 lights out pledges. We do that through asking residents and businesses to participate. And with having a newer small chapter, that can seem a little bit daunting to try to get that much awareness and interaction participation on a local level. The way that we're doing this is by getting the participation of other service organizations. So through those 10,000 Lights Out pledges, we have 10-point organizations that are the lead for each 1,000 Lights Out pledges. Some of those examples are Scenic Rapid City, which is part of Scenic America, or the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts. We've got other service organizations that are willing to help, whether it's businesses or neighborhood communities. And by providing 1,000 Lights Out pledges, one of their benefits is to be able to have a booth at our Dark Sky Festival. The booth we usually sell to help raise money for the event is $250, and that's one way that we help provide funding for the event. If they come up with 1,000 Lights Out pledges, then they get a complimentary space and awareness for doing that work. Other organizations that you can think about approaching are Masonic groups. There are a lot of adult and youth Masonic groups that are looking for service projects for each year, and they have a great network to be able to get the word out in a variety of different ways. Other groups I've talked to are Rotary, Lions Club, Toastmasters, school classrooms, and those are all great ways or ideas to reach out so you can get more participation. Then at the night of the event, the attendees can fill out these pledge cards and include them in the basket that we have there. What we do from that point, once we have all those pledges, we drop them off to our city council administrators, and they can see the support that is in the community and the interest of people that want dark skies. This year, what we're looking to incorporate is an electronic version of that versus the paper, to try to go both routes. Another way that we raise funds is by selling our Luna mascot owl, and with the Luna adoption, they get a certificate of adoption, and it's liked by kids and adults alike. Makes a great present. We sell them for $50, and that helps fund our local dark sky efforts. The third point for a takeaway here is speaking out for Lights Out. One way to get the word out is speaking to groups. A great way to do that is for TEDx talks. There have been a number of TEDx talks on dark skies, light pollution topics, and there's a TEDx Rapid City that I spoke at last year. And it's a great opportunity to get the awareness because it's going to go online as well and have a lasting impact. Other groups that you can talk to get the awareness out is really your city council is a huge aspect. The approach I found worked the best with city council members is to talk to them one-on-one. I approached every city council member in Rapid City and invited them out for coffee just to breach the topic of light pollution, tell them what it is, do they know anything about it, and how it impacts our city. Of our town of 70,000 people, our budget for lighting, just for the energy-wise, is over $900,000. It's almost $1 million just for the powering on the lights. That doesn't include the installation and the maintenance of the light poles themselves. So when I went to the mayor and talked about what his interest was in reducing light pollution and if there's a solution that we can do to reduce that, he was very in favor of thinking we have this $1 million on the table that we could save by reducing our lighting. His comment even was, if we can turn the lights on, we can turn the lights off. The other group that I'm really active with is Toastmasters. They allow you a platform for getting out and speaking, helping your public speaking skills. It's a great platform to brainstorm, get feedback and evaluations on your speaking abilities, and spreading the word. And there's multiple chapters internationally and a great network of individuals. So I encourage you to be a guest speaker to get that word out, whether it's meeting one-on-one or service organizations or on a larger platform like TED Talks. A takeaway that I would like for you guys to think about is not only striving for less light pollution, but no light pollution. Rather than lights down, maybe we could have lights out. And I invite you all to attend our 3rd annual Dark Sky Festival on Friday, April 20th in Rapid City.
Well, thank you, Diane. Our next speaker is Susan Harder. Susan joined the IDA over 20 years ago, and she's the New York State IDA chapter leader and a legacy member. An illuminating engineering society of North America trained lighting designer, she has assisted dozens of communities enact outdoor lighting ordinances, starting by refining her own town's lighting code in East Hampton. She's a board member of the local observatory and helped establish an observatory park in Montauk, Long Island. Please welcome Susan.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. First of all, I want to thank the IDA staff for putting this together. It's a wonderful organization. I want to help you in any way that I can. I'm a legacy member. I wanted to add that. And I also want to thank all of you because I know that this effort's going to take an army. And I can see that, there's people here who are attacking this issue on many levels. So my talk is much more practical. I've actually helped implement a great many changes, large and small, but I'm not in charge of anything. I try to influence those who can implement change. And none of the things that I feel that I have helped enact or change has been perfect. I didn't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good. But you will see, I've got 4 examples. Some of the changes were easy. For example, Brookhaven is a very large town on Long Island. And I called up the street lighting gentleman and I said, there's a flat lens Cobra head that's available. He goes, oh, that sounds like a good idea, and he just did it. On the other hand, Leo Smith and I have been repeatedly and constantly on every level that we could imagine, working with New York City. We have not managed to crack that nut. But they say, first they ignore you, then they fight you, which is where we're at with New York, and then you win. So I'm waiting for the win, but we'll try to make some things happen. I want to suggest first and foremost that, this is not my slide, but that it's really important. I go forward?
Yeah, it's all in one.
Which way do I point this thing? Oh, what?
You could go, let me see this little button.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've lost I think it's really important that you have a solution before you complain about a problem. And one of the ways that I've been managing to make some changes is I work pretty closely with lighting manufacturers' reps, and they will help you for free. But what you have to do is be very strict about what you tell them you want and what you tell them you don't want. I don't know about the rest of you, but we had a lot of these mounted on public utility poles, a lot. Tens of thousands on Long Island. So we found this fixture. It's called a mongoose. It's what they refer to as a full cutoff. Hampton, they installed the acorn pole, round globe, and they had 250 watts of high pressure sodium. And the reason they had 250 is because previously it had been a 250 incandescent bulb. As you know, high pressure sodium is 5 times as powerful. So what happened was it blinded you on these short poles, and a gentleman was killed. This is the new one. You can see that they've now turned their porch light on a light meter, and I showed them they didn't have enough light in certain areas. Through the woods, the school looked like it was on fire because of all the unshielded fixtures. So I worked with the manufacturer, came up with a lighting plan for free, and systematically they changed out all the lightings on that little local school. My town had a lighting law, and it was too vague to be enforced. So what we do is when somebody comes into the planning department and they want to put in a commercial enterprise, they're handed these guidelines for exterior lighting. And I'm sorry you can't read this very well, but on my website, Dark Sky Society, you can download this. But it talks about the reasons that we want to use lighting properly. It uses Bob Creelan's excellent diagrams of acceptable and unacceptable fixtures. And they have to provide a lighting plan that shows that they're not exceeding the values that are in the IESNA recommended practices. So the result is we have a clear night sky in East Hampton. We also have quite a bit of protected land. And I'm working with, I'm on the board of the observatory, and we bought a 20-inch Meade professional grade telescope, which will be accessible on the web, and you'll be able to see the night sky. We have still a view of the clear Milky Way on the eastern end of Long Island, because we're completely surrounded by water. It's a peninsula. So we're responsible for our night sky. We're not intruded on by any other municipalities. But I want to make a point about street lighting in general, which is right now the standards that are written for street lighting are, how much time do I have?
You have plenty.
I got enough? Okay. I always like to be short to the point. The committee that writes the standards for street lighting, the voting majority is made up of people who represent manufacturers. And I am trying to get my own town to set an example by taking out street lights where they're not providing a safety benefit. And my estimate that in my town, where street lights were installed by the utility when they were extending the electric lines, they would put up a street light, and that way they could reclaim the money by having the municipality pay for the electricity over the years. So I'm going to try to institute taking them out, and my estimate is probably about 80% are not providing a public safety benefit. And I think if you go around in your own communities, you'll see the same thing. I have had them install middle-of-the-night shutoffs, which you could see those little buttons that are on the top of the streetlights. They're dusk to dawn, but they also have a version that is middle-of-the-night shutoff. And this is, provides a benefit. Leo Smith worked with his utility and state, and they had to provide a separate tariff in order to provide, so that the municipalities wouldn't be billed for lighting that they didn't need. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Susan. And our final panelist is Royu Lee. Royu Lee is an undergraduate student at the University of Arizona. He's been an important and active participant with the IDA Beijing chapter and the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Fund's Dark and Starry Sky Committee. He loves astronomy and starry skies, and he enjoys the effort of giving the dark back to the night. Let's welcome Royu Lee.
So hello everyone, I'm Royu Lee from the University of Arizona, and actually I'm representing the Chinese Biodiversity Conservation and the Green Development Foundation Dark and Starry Sky Committee to bring you the presentation called the Fighting for the Dark and Starry Sky. Here is the one who prepared this PowerPoint called the Ren Xiaodong, who is the leader of the Dark and Starry Sky Committee. Let's start with a brief introduction of the foundation and the DSSA. So the Chinese Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation Dark and Starry Sky Committee was built in September 2015, and under the cooperation between the IDA's Beijing chapter and the CBC GDF. It is the first specialized organization in China dedicated to promote the night environment and the dark sky related culture. Which is opened like totally new era in China in this kind of field, because like we don't have any organization in China before to doing this kind of thing. So next one is our missions. So as you can see in the slides, we have our missions to advocate light pollution control, to establish dark sky protect area in China, and to promote dark sky culture industry involved with the conservation, popularization, tourism, and creativity, and to raise the awareness of the public to protect the Chinese starry skies. So by closely working with the IDA, the DSSA achieved some great progress since last year. So I was in the annual meeting like for 3 years, and every year we have like totally new the progress. So the first progress since last year is we have boosted the institutionalization and the standardization of the dark sky conservation in China. The DSSA formed the standards and guidelines for the Chinese dark sky protect area, which is going to be published really soon. And it lays down the 4 preconditions for the establishment of the Chinese dark sky protect area. And the first point is the starry sky is qualified. Second point is the institutional framework and management is complete. And the third point is the outdoor lighting is qualified. And the fourth point is activities related to dark sky protection must be conducted. So at the same time, the DSSA encourage and assists related institutions to establish the dark sky protect area. Also like dark sky parks, theme parks on dark sky community, which can be combined with a natural ecological area. scientific observation area or the tourism area. The DSSA should certify and notify this area which have met these conditions, and DSSA should also assist qualified area to apply for the IDA's final certification of the International Dark Sky Park. Moreover, the CPC GDF cooperates with the China Illuminating Engineering Society, called the CIES, so in order to get the academic support. So both sides have worked together to formulate the standards for the dark sky protected area in China. And in the future, the CPC GDF and the China Illuminating Engineering Society will continue to cooperate in the moderate illumination and lighting pollution control, as well as pushing forward the formulation of law on the light pollution control. And so the second progress is we expanded the pilot projects and accepted 3 protected areas on as the potential dark sky protected areas. And you may heard this before since I talked it last year. And Ali and Nachu had become the first 2 dark sky protected area in China and opening a new area for the Chinese dark sky conservation efforts. And so far, the DSSA has accepted 3 new places as a potential dark sky protected area, which is the Rainbow Sanding Area, 7-star sanding area in the Kubuqi Desert National Park, and the Oriental Salted Lake City, the Tall Sanding Area. And this is the acceptance symbolizes the establishment of the formal cooperative relation between the DSSA and this scenic area, and also symbolize a new phase for the construction of Chinese dark sky conservation. This scenic area is going to be the Chinese dark sky parks after finishing this the capability building. And the more exciting thing is there are more and more scenic area or the forest park inviting us to do the investigation. They just find us maybe on website or through email, and they ask the foundation to come to do the investigation. And so there are 2 more places waiting on the list to be accepted as a potential dark sky protected area. It shows that the concept of dark sky protection has taken root and spotted in China. We accepted the invitation from the Taixing Honggu National Forest Park. And after the investigation, we believe that the park has met the standards for building the dark sky protected area and established the strategic partnership with it. And we are working closely and with administrative agency for the scenic area to build it into the Chinese dark sky protected area and prepare for the application for the International Dark Sky Protected Park. And the third progress is we have made continuous effort to raise the awareness of the public to protect the dark and starry skies throughout diversified activities. So in the last year, we have several activities, and the first one called the Starry Sky Above the Desert Culture Festival and the International Dark Sky Protection Forum. The DSSA and the Kubuqi National Desert Park together hold the festival and the forum and attract lots of attentions. And experts from the Chinese Academy of Science, National Astronomical Observatory of China, called the NAOC, also discuss topics on the light pollution's impact on the astronomical observation and reflect the starry skies kind of resource, etc. And the second activity, the global essay competition on the topic of looking up into the starry sky. So the DSSA is working together with the Astronomy Observatory Board and the National Astronomical Observatory of China and the Hong Kong Satellite TV to hold this essay competition, and which is still ongoing. And so far we have received over 1,600 essays And there are lots of authors describe the unique starry sky in their important moment of their life, which is really touching and impressive. And the third activity is watching the meteor shower together with the DSSA. The DSSA organized a lot of meteor fans to watch meteor showers and at the same time conduct popularization of the starry sky conservation. And these activities are really welcomed by the public, and we also have like live the streaming, and a lot of people over the channel watch the meteor shower shows. And also we have a photo exhibition of the starry sky. One of right now the leader of the IDA Beijing chapter called Jeff Dai is a photographer of the astronomy photographer, which is really famous in China, and he held the photo exhibition in the Beijing Planetarium, as well as the Xinglong Station, which is the largest observatory in the Asia. So it's attracted a lot of people there, especially a lot of kids. And the last activity is the lectures on the dark sky in the primary schools. So children were really like fascinated by the starry sky pictures, videos, and stories, and splendid starry sky, and also begin to be aware of the necessity and importance to protect the dark sky. So, recently, the President Xi Jinping, in the 19th CPC National the CPC GDF Dark and Starry Sky Committee, and he worked with Miss Wang Xiaohua, who just passed away this summer, and for 2 years, and set up the China's first dark sky protect area, and achieving remarkable process in the preserving Chinese dark skies and recent.
I'm not sure if there are any plans, somebody may know, to post the presentation somewhere. We can mention that later, hopefully. But that concludes our panel presentations. And with such an esteemed panel that we have assembled for you here today, they've got a wealth of knowledge and a depth of experience that we need to take advantage of. So now we'll turn to question and answer session. We have about 30 or 40 minutes for that. And we'll do it from the table here, and raise your hand, I'll pick you out, and I'll repeat the question for the rest of the audience, but hopefully we'll have some good dialogue.
Any chance you can adjust these blowers? Am I the only person that is freezing? It's really cold. My table is so cold I can't.
Okay, you technical wizards in the back, can we adjust the temperature? I think the answer is yes. Okay. All right. Next question. Oh, we have a microphone? Okay, good. All right.
So I have a question, since I'm working on a very large city for Susan Harder. I do a lot of research online. There was a Gothamist article. Now I think the Gothamists may be going out of business, but it had said that New York City was possibly changing to 3,000K LEDs for Manhattan, Staten Island, and the Bronx, but continuing with 4,000K and the wider LEDs in Brooklyn and Queens. And also that 3/4 of their streetlight complaints had come from Brooklyn and Queens in the past year, and that there's no mechanism for complaining about a streetlight that's too bright.
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I was trying to stop the noise here. Do you know anything about New York City's LED streetlights? Can you hear me? And whether they are moving to warmer lighting in Manhattan and the Bronx? Maybe you can repeat the question. The Gothamist reported that was the case.
Okay, I actually know quite a bit about this situation. The Dark Sky Group informed the Chief of Staff of the New York City Department of Transportation, and as well, she listened to Dr. Stevens's presentation about the dangers of high Kelvin. completely ignored it, and put in the 4,000 plus. They say it's 4,000, it's actually higher than 4,000 Kelvin. Recently, and then I helped work with the New York City Council. We drafted a law to require them to be 3,000 Kelvin or less. That's still sitting in the City Council. But in the meantime, the AMA came out with their 3,000 Kelvin maximum recommendation. In the meantime, we've got all these LEDs already installed, probably in your neighborhood, and they're not going to be changed. But they say, don't have proof yet, and my manufacturers are trying to find out, are the specifications for the remaining LEDs, are they going to be 3,000? I still think 3,000 is too high. It's still very blue, it's very glary, it contributes more to the sky glow, and now we have manufacturers that are making LEDs in the 2,000 Kelvin range. So I don't know what to tell you. I would appreciate it if you would call your local council person and ask them to sign on to the bill. And once we get enough sponsors, co-sponsors on that bill, it will move forward. So let's meet afterwards and I'll get your information.
Okay, the question was from Debbie Moran, who's from Houston. And why don't you take a minute just to explain, where did Houston land on the Kelvin temperature for the LED change out on the streetlights in Houston?
Yeah, although you'll hear a lot more about this on the second panel, but Houston's been putting in 4,000 K and intensely bright in the residential areas. Ours are 45 watts. I saw that Los Angeles, when they had 4,000 K, they were using 35 watt and 25 watt to 35 watts. So that's what I've been working on, is trying to get Houston to warm its lighting, and I have failed so far. There's still a few more areas that are left, and I have a lighting architect and a realtor, a lot of non-astronomers working with me. The city council thinks they are all astronomers because that's what they were told. But right now we're at 4,000 K, and I'm trying to get anything warmer at all, preferably 2,700 K or warmer in residential areas.
You know, I have a suggestion. See if you can get a manufacturer to provide you free. I'm sure they would do it for free. They would have the contract. Try to get them to give you a demonstration of a lower Kelvin. Get your community group together to look at it, and then they could put the pressure on your city council to bring that Kelvin down for the remaining fixtures.
Yeah, that would be great if there's a way I can unilaterally do that, because I asked the city a long time ago to try to do test installations, and they have not done it. But if you know a way to unilaterally, what we just have some kind of test installation, let me know. Okay.
Hi, my name is Jason Shane. I'm from Sugar Land, Texas, and you're just in Houston neighborhood. I just want you guys to know that the technology is here, but the resistance is so strong. In 2002, we already developed the first 2200K. It's so beautiful. And actually, we put it on a Mercedes dealer. But the city even the city says every light should be in 2200K and lower. They see it, even the councilman from Sugar Land all said, one lady actually cried. He said, this day will never come. But at that time, the 2200K is very energy inefficient, because we use a lot of fluorescent dye to cover the blue spectrum. But now, together with our Canadian partner, we're actually working with the efficiency is just as high as the 5,000K. So that's the reason we want to see it's available, it's just people want to ignore it. Thank you. I'm from Houston, I'll give you free samples.
Thank you.
I want to comment on talking to city councils with your language that is with the ratings. For example, when we say 3,000 kelvins or below, they take that as 3,000 kelvins. And for example, we had a lighting designer come into our sustainability committee, and he brought an acorn light and said, see, this is an example of a dark sky approved fixture. It's 3,000 kelvins, and the acorn scatters the light, so it doesn't go straight up. So it's, when we say 3,000 or below, that gets cut off in the language. It stops at 3,000. Or if we say up to 3,000, they take that as 3,000 is the measurement. So if you really want 2,700 or 2,200, be specific in that.
Yeah, I just, a small room, I just want you guys to understand, so really encourage you to come to tomorrow to listen to me. so it's very ironic, as a light guy, you know, I will really try to put the dark sky. Yes, it is a lot of science. I'm a scientist by training, so all the things put on there is wrong. So that's why I really happy. I notice people. Really, I was praying that I would see people who appreciate my appreciation in darkness. I'm also in training in biosynthesis. I know you guys all talk about human life. Sparingly, you talk about the little animals like the owls, the ferrets. But remember, don't forget the plants. Plants also need a very complete dark also. That's they were created for. So, but to answer your question about the acorn lights, dark sky is, the light has a lot to do with the directions. We want to put all the lights, it's aimed. It's damaging, but we want to limit it. So we'll talk about single source light, like the great sun. Wow, my echo. So, but I will, I'm not prepared. I'm just so thrilled that we have the whole room from all over the country, even have somebody, my buddy from Colombia. But I really want to talk to you guys about the technology. It's available. It's some of the, warriors want to fight with you, but the resistance, the industry, the Cree, the energy company, they want you to burn as much. It's just like a car manufacturer. They don't want your cars to last forever. They want you buy it, you break down, you buy a new one. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll comment on that briefly. Can you tell us if it's as efficient, but what about the cost to purchase it? So to operate it, it's as efficient, but what about the initial outlay?
The initial is initial is a little higher, but the importance is the light delivery. A lot of people talk about a total lumen output, but most of the lights are going everywhere. So in a situation like the airport, like the higher, we can use a 30 watt to replace 1,000 watt. So you give me, is that expensive? I don't know.
Well, thank you. I know one issue I've faced in my community is that the electric company has already an inventory of, higher Kelvin fixtures. And so they want to go through that inventory, install them, of course, because they can't give them back. So that's an issue that we've been facing. But next question, let's go right here in front.
Just a comment on your remark there about the utility companies. Most of the issue with the utility company doesn't have to do with an inventory pileup that they have of, let's say, an existing 4,000K. Instead, what it is that at the time that the utility company makes the decision that they want to go forward with switching over to LEDs, what they do is they take and they have a group that's called their standards group. Now the standards group really has nothing to do with anything in terms of like implementation or anything like that. What they do is they want to make sure that the products that they bring in of any kind are products that are reliable and that they're getting a good deal price-wise and that there is, let's say, definitely a good warranty period. And so when they look around for those lights, let's just say that they pick the manufacturer for the 4,000K. The problem that the utility company has when you go back and say you want to do 3,000 is it means that they have to go back to their standards group and get their standards group to now approve a 3,000K. As a matter of general rule, the utility company doesn't really have, they may have some, inventory for backup, but it's not anything that would be, like we got a 6-month supply or a year supply or something like that. And even if they had some, in most cases, the vendor would be more than happy to switch out those lights for the 3000s to continue to be the vendor, as opposed to perhaps losing the contract. But it is with the standards group that really the problem lies. They have to approve any new fixture. So, you know, that's really where the issue lies.
And a new tariff has to be calculated, which
Yeah.
takes quite a long time.
Yeah, the tariff doesn't necessarily mean a lot, because in our case, at least in Connecticut, utility companies can bring tariffs in for modest changes, okay?
Ours take quite a long time.
If they were going to do a new rate case or something like that, then that's a long process.
Yeah.
But in bringing in the new LED lights, it was like, you know, just enter a new tariff and it gets a cursory review and stamped and goes on. But it's a matter, it's also too, let's say for example, you have a 50-watt high pressure sodium light, and the question is, how much do you really need in an LED to be able to change it out to something that provides equivalent visibility? Well, General Electric makes a 14-watt LED, but most utility companies don't have that. In this case, the utility company in our state didn't pick it because GE would not give them the same 15-year warranty that Cooper Lighting was willing to give, and so they went with Cooper Lighting, but Cooper Lighting doesn't have a 14-year or 15-year warranty.
Yep.
So in the spirit of being very positive. Yes, it's Nancy. Hi, Susan. In the spirit of being very positive, what is happening with the luminaire manufacturing is really pushing their engineering into understanding we need flexibility in everything. And what we have been pushing the manufacturer, I'm a line designer and an engineer, so, but we've been looking at, we don't know what the impact may be on plants and animals and everything. We've got some data. We may need to change it as more information comes. So what we're talking to the manufacturers of doing is not white tuning, but spectral tuning, so that we're not working with two different color temperatures up and down. We're actually hand selecting spectrum to be able to turn off some action spectrum and to be able to dim the lights and come up with an adaptive system where every single light can be controlled separately. And what we want to do with the manufacturers is actually now doing a dynamic distribution so that we can actually adjust where the light goes depending on the application. And so this is a really exciting time, and I encourage people to put out their wish list, and utility companies, I mean, anyone here from a utility company? Oh, that's too bad. It'd be kind of cool if you were. Yeah, I mean because basically what we're doing with cities, if the utility company is not proactive, then we're helping cities buy back their system and take it over. So that's kind of the exciting news on everything, and I would really encourage you all to really look at and encourage being fun. And by the way, I grew up in Duluth. I love that city, so thank you. That was awesome.
That's a great segue to a question that just came in from YouTube. We're broadcasting on YouTube, and this is from Rav in Toronto. He wants to know, how much emphasis should we be putting on correlated color temperature because low CCT can have high amounts of blue light? Anybody on the panel?
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Huh?
Lower CCT will have lower.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a microphone over here.
Yeah, well,
I think what he said is that the higher CCT would have a more blue lighting. Yeah, because that's what allows for the CCT. I have one small comment with Nancy's with flexibility. well, working with lighting manufacturers, one light that we've been working with and we've installed in a couple small applications is a microwatt light, and it's made by a sailing company. It's waterproof, and we've put it in railings, and it's Suncor stainless. It's like 1/20th of a watt, and that's like the perfect amount of light to light up a railing and not block your light of the stars or Lake Superior. But that kind of super small, really low level of lighting would be really nice to have as a available fixture.
So, Glenn's?
Yeah, I guess I'm the next commenter, but I could attempt to answer that question that came in from YouTube in very crude terms. I'm a lighting designer. The sort of difference in the amount of blue light in a typical 3K LED and a typical 4K LED is, I mean, it depends what you consider blue light. It's about 20%. So it's not, you know, it's not huge. So my comment in listening to all this discussion, I was first comment to what Nancy said. Nancy's great. I mean, looking to the future, all this cool stuff and everything. The problem is right now, thousands and thousands of LED streetlights are being installed every week, every day. Probably this week, I don't know, I'm just guessing. There were probably 10,000 LED streetlights installed this week in the US. You know, I made that up. But so I think it's fantastic what I'm hearing, people out there in the communities talking to their mayors, talking to their street lighting people about doing the right thing. But I'm concerned when the first thing we started talking about is color temperature and spectral power distribution. And that is not the first thing you should be talking about. We can get distracted with that. We should be talking about not generating any more light than you absolutely have to. Or in cases like Susan said, don't light the street at all. Why do you, if you don't have to? So let's keep the light levels down. That's where you start the conversation. Then if you can talk about color temperature, fine. Fine, that's great, but you're gonna get hung up on this whole, you know, thing about color temperature and lose sight of the big picture, which is reduce the light levels and, of course, obviously reduce the amount of light. With LED fixtures today, it's easy to do. There's no reason there should be any light above horizontal. So anyhow, that's my thinking.
And I think it's a little bit confusing in our experience when you about full cutoff fixtures. People are confusing that with no light trespass. And it's great to have no light above horizontal, but if you're lighting up everybody's bedrooms half a block away from Main Street, that doesn't work very well. So getting shielding on board, again, because we're...
Deanna?
Yeah, hi. So just real quick, and then I'll ask what the question was, but I'll give you an example of what Glenn said and why what he said is important. Lake Worth, Florida, after a lot of advocacy, they actually decided to go with 2700K LEDs. So you think, hey, hooray. Well, no, the lights were installed so horribly wrong. They were extremely bright. They installed them on the existing arms of the light poles, which were all angled. So there's light trespass like crazy, and they're extremely bright. So no, 2700K did not give them a success story. So I totally agree with what you said. Don't get hung up on it. You know, there are other valid reasons for going with 27 or going with something else. But if you get the brightness wrong and everything else wrong, it's a problem. So I agree with him. My question, I wanted to kind of change and ask about these other things that you do to motivate, you know, what you've done. And I particularly like when you guys talked about the Light Side program. And I love the little thing that you showed, the, the Starry Night Neighborhood, something that you had, the placard. Because I want to motivate change in Miami. And if you know anything about Miami, I don't expect to see the Milky Way there, but I want to motivate them to protect. It's a big wildlife corridor. A lot of birds migrate, and we have a lot of potential partners that want to do so. I'm curious if you could start, how do you start those kind of incentive programs?
Well, it's really interesting. I'm glad you've had a lot of success with the lights out. That's one of the things that's gotten a lot of press. But when people started asking us about what we're doing, they said, "Oh, that means you want to turn all the lights off, right? And that'll be the horrible thing." So we didn't even try to incorporate a lights out thing into our celebration. because there was already a negative idea about that. And also the reason we had our celebration in September is during Earth Day, that whole part of April, we can still get snowstorms and stuff, so September's better for us. You've had your hand up for a long time.
Go ahead, Chad.
All right, so this is Chad Moore. Inspiring presentations. I love to hear stories from the front lines. What I was thinking throughout all the presentations, particularly Cynthia's, was that we're working at larger and larger scales now, and we're starting to work on the scale of a light shed. You know, where is the farthest light coming from? This was a vision when we created the dark sky reserve concept. We would just have a handful of dark sky reserves at this time. But I wanted to just hear from some of the panelists about what you think are the odds of doing large scale, like 200 miles across Lake Superior scale conservation. What are some of the challenges of working on that level? In China too, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts.
Hey, Chad, I can start that off because where I live in Texas, there are 3 cities that have outdoor lighting ordinances. It's Fredericksburg, Mason, and Llano, and it forms a triangle, and so we're looking at creating a dark sky reserve in that triangle. The problem is that you can't really regulate, at least in Texas, the lighting in the county areas. A city or a municipality can enact an ordinance in those 3 cities, but in the rural areas, there's no possibility of enacting an ordinance to govern and limit the lighting in those rural areas in between the cities. So, you know, you would like to do that in a big block of territory, but we have to sort of go about it in other ways, or we have to change perhaps the definitional scheme of a dark sky reserve that the IDA has, so that you do something different, like create you know, community support in the rural areas. There might be wildlife co-ops that would buy into it, you know, something like that, that you do with a support-wise and can just consent rather than imposing it through, you know, some regulation.
My experience is it has to be done, you know, city by city, you know, village by village, county by county, state by state, because they all have different characters, qualities, procedures. You know, I wish we could have a national encompassing law. I still see it as something that it's always got to be grassroots, and we have to fit within the system. We have to meet, you know, as the panelists have one-on-one with our officials. I mean, it's it's grunt work is what they refer to it as. So that's my experience. I just don't see crossing state lines yet myself. Maybe I'm not so hopeful, but that's why we have our Army developing.
I'll expand on that. This panel is on inspiring change. So how I feel that we can best inspire change is by showing and telling stories. I'll tell you a quick story. As a National Wind Cave Park Ranger, I did campfire story programs on the starry skies. We're an hour from Rapid City, where you can see the light pollution in the national parks. The meadowlarks sing to the city of Rapid City thinking it's the sun rising in the middle of the night. When we had our lights out for that 1 hour, the owl started singing at night. So there's a huge impact, and once people see that impact, feel that impact, hear that impact, that's where you're going to get your change on an individual by individual basis.
Thanks.
We actually had better luck with people getting excited about it when we went to a bigger scale. People in Duluth are connected with the lake, and they identify as kind of a Lake Superior community, even though if they have never been to the other parts of Lake Superior. So for them, thinking of it as a bigger movement, they actually liked that, I think, and they were more comfortable. It wasn't like, you know, our neighborhood versus the next neighborhood or something like that. So having that overarching idea, I think, was a little more welcoming. And what we've found is a lot of the smaller cities are more ready to go. I mean, Duluth is not a big city, but there's some cities that are 300 or 400 or 500 people that want to become dark sky places right now, and they're ready to change all of their streetlights, you know, if they have. Everybody we talked to about Celebrate the Night Skies Week was excited about it, and a lot of people were like, never even thought about this. You know, we go to the Boundary Waters and see these great stars, but never even thought about the reason we don't see them at home is because of light pollution. It's like it's so endemically part of their experience, they'd never even recognized it, and that was a huge thing.
So do you think the campaign that you had with different ways to reach different people, like social media, or you said printed paper, was that all a huge part of the success?
Yeah, all the different aspects. We had posters up in storefronts for a couple of months, and radio spots, and Facebook, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it was big. Well, it sounds like you did the same thing with all the different groups.
Yeah, we got out, social media was huge. On the radio, that's definitely beneficial too. I think the more opportunities that we can show people the stars are what's going to inspire. I can talk about it all day long, but if you get people out to experience it, the stars talk for themselves. So we have to provide that platform to happen.
So Roy, I've got a quick question for you. Another one I thought was fascinating in your presentation is how did you get, or what are the public authorities that you had to get sort of on board with protecting the night skies, and how did you convince them it was a worthwhile effort?
That was my question.
Right.
So actually, it's the biggest problem to build a dark sky park in China is like the government is don't have the awareness of the protection. And it's really hard to like the authorities, people to have the willing to build a dark sky park because they can't get any like profit from that. So the biggest like attraction is for the government is they can attract people to like build a tourism there to attract people to go to the dark park and take some good photos and experience the night sky. So yeah, and it's really hard. So up to now we only have the Nachi and Ali in the Tibet as the official dark sky park, and to build a like formal relationship with the government, with the local government here. And for other places, I know like the Miss Xiaohua Wang tried like several years ago to want to build a relationship with the local government in like many different places, and they just failed to do this because the government just don't care about this. They can't get the profit, they can't get like anything from that, so they just give up. They don't care about this. It's really hard.
Thank you. Any more?
Well, can you stole my question, but I'll give it to someone else. Was it
over here? Okay. So,
Connie, you should have another question.
Oh no, well that was the one I was going to ask. It's okay. I'll think of another one.
Okay. So
who wants
my
this?
background is in education and outreach, and I was really inspired by Cynthia and Diane's stories of creating these collaborative partnerships with a lot of different groups. But my ears particularly pricked up when Cynthia, you were talking about medical people. So I'm kind of curious to follow up about who you involved and what their story was.
Duluth is a medical center for all of northern Minnesota and northern Wisconsin and a lot of western Michigan. So there's a lot of medical people there. Talking about the medical issue, the human health issues with light. Some people are more aware of it than others, of course, but that was a really big draw. One of the people presenting was Shadab Rahman, and he's a researcher here in Boston with Harvard. And so that actually drew, the Duluth News Tribune did a story. They actually called him up and interviewed him, which is kind of big for a small paper. And they did a story on that, and that drew some medical people to the conference. But there's a general interest. Duluth is kind of emerging as an outdoor town. It has really high outdoor, high quality of life ideas, values and virtues. So the medical component of that people who are in the medical field are often also interested in outdoor recreation or the high quality environment and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of carryover of those things in our area.
Hi, I'm Paul Vallali from the Boston Telescope Makers Society. Question for Susan, get your attention. You said that the Milky Way was visible from your Montauk Observatory. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is there a light dome to the west from the city?
Of course. I mean, it's... we can't see it from East Hampton.
Oh, it's below the horizon.
Okay, yeah. So it's far enough over the horizon, basically. And the other question is for anybody. What is it with the Asian communities, whether it be Mumbai, India, Tokyo, or Beijing, that they are in love with nighttime lighting? Gross, terrible LED signs, colored lights, back and forth. I don't understand that culture. I enjoy dark skies like up at Stellafane.
Yeah, actually I know like for Chinese people at least, like they treat the lighting in the city as a sign of the economic power, and they think if the like Beijing or Shanghai and this city have like many lights, they even shoot the like lights to the sky, and they just treat them like to show how rich the city is, like how fancy the building is. So yeah, you can say like throughout the history, like Chinese people like the fireworks, like these kind of fancy lighting things. So I think it's in the culture. So it's really hard to convince people like to lower the light, because it's if people say like the city is really dark and they think the city is not that rich, not that developed.
I'll expand on that a little bit. One of our city council members said when I was meeting with him why he liked the lighting is because he's thought that developed city, the more economic development you have, the brighter the city is. He was a rancher, and he said we left our lights on our horses every single night because it made their coats shinier. 24/7, their horses were exposed to artificial light because it made their coats shinier. So with getting the response to reducing light, one thing that could be done locally in community is if you see a billboard that's lit up, call the business that's advertising on the billboard and say, I'm not going to go to your business if you have a lit up billboard, because they want business and that's why they're advertising. If it's going to be a deterrent, they're not going to advertise on the billboards anymore. That's one way to get the word out. One of the architects said that I light up the building because I want people to see the building. Don't you think the building is pretty? I go, I think the stars are pretty. So they want to light it up, but then again, if you call that building, the owner of that building, and say, I'm not going to patron your business because has light trespass or it's glowing, then they'll start thinking about that in a new way.
Okay, we've got one question that's coming in from Facebook from Melissa Rose. She wants to know, how can I successfully generate real interest in my ultra-rural frontier community in becoming a dark sky destination? So it's probably already pretty dark there. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's stories. But people, when we would get together with people, we would ask everybody, what's your favorite night sky story? And just going around the room, even if we hadn't talked about anything else, like that was almost enough to hear. Everybody had a night sky story, whether it was from when they were a little kid. One person said she got glasses when she was 4 and she'd never even seen the stars before. And she looked up at night for the first time and she fell over almost. It was like so amazing. So everybody has a story like that. And I think starting with that can be It's not like you're not trying to compete or compare yourself to a city, or you're not saying that you're an environmentalist or that you're trying to make money, or, I mean, there are all these different angles you can get to, but when you get to the personal story, I think that can be one of the most motivating things for people to connect with.
Sure.
It's not quite on topic, but I think everybody needs to know this. I've probably helped to have about 15 or 20 municipal lighting laws enacted. Every single one was either sponsored, co-sponsored by Republican, which I think surprises people. So it's really important to emphasize that this is a non-political issue, which of course it is. But that was something that surprised me. And so there is something about this issue that appeals to both parties. Thanks.
I'll say, just from my experience in some of the rural communities, not necessarily frontier, you have conservative people, rural ranchers, you know, those types, and when you tell them, do you want all of these tourists coming in, or, you know, influx from the big cities into your small town bringing all of their lights? And one strategy is to say, we're not asking you to change something in terms of imposing regulations to keep the skies dark. All we're suggesting is that let's just keep it the way it is, you know, so you can see the Milky Way that you grew up with, so that it stays the same, and this influx of people don't change it is one strategy that we've used. I think somebody over here, there, you, yes, you've had your hand up a long time.
Hi, my name is Marlon. Scott invited me to this. I'm speaking tomorrow. I have a production called Art and Darkness, and I've been doing this for about 30 years. And it's what you were saying about it's stories that that capture people's imaginations. And what I tend to believe is that arts and entertainment spreads more rapidly and is consumed more enthusiastically than educational programs. And the show's been in China a couple of times touring, and I have my own theories as to why the Chinese like the lights so much. They were the inventor of fireworks. It goes back several thousand years, so they're very much used to looking at lights into a dark sky. And my personal belief, and part of this, one of the questions I had for the IDA as a whole is there a collective story that this organization has that it wants to put out to the world so that we're all telling the same story together? I personally believe that when we can no longer see the heavens that we belong to, that we forget that we belong to the heavens. And the disconnect that people are having by not being able to see this eternity that we're part of is, I think, part of what's causing such a fracturing of our culture and our society, and the disconnect that we have from each other. So yes, that was the question. Does IDA look at creating a collective story that we all can be telling together to capture the public's imagination? Thank you. Come and listen to my talk tomorrow.
Yeah, we probably have time for one last question, do you think? Okay. So...
I just wanted to...
Answer this question.
Huh? Scott? Where's Scott? Do we have a collective consciousness on, you know, story? Yeah.
Storytelling, it means have really become kind of mainstream in terms of organizations' ability to motivate and engage the public. I'll make this quick, Ken, because there's a young lady over here who's been waiting to ask a question. Real quickly, the Power Stories is really an important means that organizations, nonprofits of all walks are using very effectively to motivate, inspire, and engage their constituencies and others. And I think Marlon's point is spot on. To be very candid, we don't have a story yet, but we've got a great team, an amazing new communications director back here, Amanda, who you'll be meeting. And I'm going to put that at the very top of the list for us to begin thinking about what that might look like and how to develop it. Did you want to say something, Amanda, real quick on that? Our story we might tell?
So a story that we tell the public about the relationship to the night sky. Well, I think it's a big part of it is events like this where we can all come together and be inspired by each other's stories, right? And we're asking each other, why is the dark sky meaningful to us? What's in it that inspires us to do this hard work of showing up in our communities and putting ourselves out there and being vulnerable and asking other people to learn to share this thing that a lot of people aren't even conscious of. So our work right now is to learn from you all who are here today and sharing these amazing stories and learning from your successes on the ground and making sure that we can repeat those in other places.
Thanks for the question, Marlon.
One last question over here, Scott.
Thank you. Hi, I'm from central New York, up near Syracuse, not above, just above Westchester, upstate. Just a couple of comments. I was at my local cemetery board meeting this week, and an issue that's come up, and I'm sure it's elsewhere, is the use of the little solar lights that people are putting next to their families' gravestones. It makes me crazy. The dead are not afraid of the dark. And I will continue to put my voice out there at these board meetings, but I'm totally I'm in minority of one. It's a small board. Another thing, is there anything being done about those super blinding blue bright headlights? And I'm throwing that out there. And one other thing was New York City, I think it was way back at the beginning of this year, Cuomo was doing, it was something like his State of the Union address, but it wasn't. He was gloating, it was unbelievable. He was gloating about having all the bridges around Manhattan, the 5 boroughs, lit up with different colors, and they were going to be synchronized with music. I was like, oh my gosh. I thought that was really a bizarre thing. But people love that stuff.
There's 4 words for that: aquatic environmental impact statement.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask one more question. Okay, one last question from Facebook is, how do I get my city to reinforce their light pollution laws that they already have?
That's probably better for the other panel.
Leading question.
Enforcing it?
Yeah, how do you get the city to enforce their existing light ordinance?
To get the local lighting laws enforced, the city council needs to hear from residents. So they're only going to be reactive if they're hearing complaints. And it doesn't mean you have to be rude about it. You just have to voice your opinion. And the more attention that has, the more enforcement it will get.
And in New York State, there's an Article 78, which might be equivalent in other states, where you can go before a judge, and the judge will make them enforce the law. Because there are some municipalities where the enforcement official, I know one particular community on Long Island, where they were getting paid under the table not to enforce the law. And the neighbors brought an Article 78, and the judge made the enforcement official enforce the law.
And another issue is that you could put in your outdoor lighting ordinance, I've seen some ordinance have a provision in them that says a private citizen can bring an action to enforce, especially for trespass or nuisance, can bring an action under the ordinance individually if they want to. All right, with that, I want to thank our esteemed panel and for all their wisdom and insight, and also to thank you, the audience, for a great bunch of questions, and then finally thank our sponsor, Your True Nature. We're going to take about a 10-15 minute break and start for 10. I said 10. I said 10 at 3:30. So 3:30, come back and we'll begin with the second panel. Kelly's anxious to start. Yes.
The sun goes down every single day in cities around the world, and as day turns to night, we illuminate our cities with artificial light. Unfortunately, much of this artificial lighting is a form of pollution. This light pollution threatens our environments, energy resources, humans and wildlife, as well as astronomical research. And with cities consistently expanding, this form of pollution is progressively affecting our lives and spreading further each year. So why do I care? Well, apart from all the negative effects, the further you move away from the cities, the less light pollution there is. And the night sky, free of light pollution, with all its incredible detail. Well, that's just something you really need to experience for yourself. Life without dark skies? You don't know what you're missing. The sun goes down every single day in cities around the world, and as day turns to night, we illuminate our cities with artificial light. Unfortunately, much of this artificial lighting is a form of pollution. This light pollution threatens our environments, energy resources, humans and wildlife, as well as astronomical research. And with cities consistently expanding, this form of pollution is progressively affecting our lives and spreading further each year. So why do I care? Well, apart from all the negative effects, the further you move away from the cities, the less light pollution there is. And the night sky, free of light pollution, with all its incredible detail. Well, that's just something you really need to experience for yourself. Life without dark skies? You don't know what you're missing.
Good.
Yeah, you know.
All right, everyone come and have a seat. We're going to get started here. Paul Vallely. This is God. Sit down. Okay. Catherine and Amanda, I'm going to start. Is that okay? Thumbs up. May I start? Are you ready? Yeah, I got 2 thumbs up there. Okay. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. I'm Kelly Beatty. I'm on the board of directors. I've been on the board since 2006. We're going to continue the theme of storytelling, and I want to tell you a story I had 5 minutes ago. I ran out to the car to get my sport coat, came back in, met a couple checking in the elevator. They saw my name tag and said, "Oh, are you with the Dark Skies?" I said, "Yes." They said, "Are you trying to make the skies darker?" "Yes." "Keep up the good work." Okay, so this is Inspiring Change in Your Community, Part 2. We have a sponsor for this. And our sponsor is Sunday Afternoons. They're sponsoring this session. They've been making hats for over 25 years for everyone and everything under the sun, moon, and stars. Watch for their Big One Sky campaign this spring. I have one of their hats here. Now, you're probably wondering, why should I buy this plain gray cat? Because this is inside out. When you do it this way, it's got constellations. Right? So there are several of these. You can wear them at the selfie station to take pictures. Also, I want to mention that we're live tweeting on IDA Boston 2017. And I have it on good authority that whoever live tweets the most, and this does not include John Barentine, who's doing it back from IDA headquarters, there might be a hat in it for you. Okay. So with that, we're going to move on. Let's see. I forgot my program. One moment. I really don't need this to introduce our first speaker, who's Bob Creelan, but I'll write what he wrote. He's the inventor of the glare buster, which a lot of you know about, the author of a book called There Once Was a Sky Full of Stars, and he's been a pioneer and developer of countless municipal and state and local outdoor lighting laws. He's the Walter Scott Houston Award winner for his work in changing policy and perceptions regarding light pollution. He's also an award-winning designer, inventor, and all-around nice guy. Nice guy. Bob, the floor is yours.
We'll be with you momentarily. This is forward?
Yep.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here today. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Well, let's see. What did I put in here for slides? I've been involved in dark sky issues right since the beginning of my interest in astronomy and owning a telescope. This all started all came together in the early 1990s. I got my first telescope. It was something that was always in my heart after seeing a planetarium show when I was young. Always was up looking at the stars in the backyard at night, and finally got serious and got a telescope in the 1990s, and was immediately taken and losing a lot of sleep from that point on. I wanted to immediately share what I was learning and discovering out there in the night sky. So I tended to get involved with schools and libraries and other public festivals and so forth that were going on to actually share the night sky, telescope programs, whatever. And this is a shot from one of the school programs that I was doing. And at the same time, I was realizing that as I was getting deeper in the interest of astronomy and observing the night sky, how the night sky had seemed to have changed. And it really became poignant when my daughter was about 4 years old, and I wanted to show her the Milky Way in the town where I grew up in, and was unable to really point it out. So it became obvious really quickly about what the problem was, and it didn't make a heck of a lot of sense. So I immediately started getting involved. I had a public stargazing session that would happen every month with my local astronomy club in the town of Branford, Connecticut, and I wound up creating these postcards, and I'm not going to tell this whole big long story. It's something, if you ever get a chance, Sky and Telescope has wonderfully kept the story I wrote for the magazine up, called How I Beat Light Pollution in My Hometown, and it's easy to get right on their website. Basically, got a simple way of having the local residents who were coming excitedly to these stargazing sessions to fill out a simple postcard with their name saying that they're concerned about this and would like the town to do something about it. And so it was an interesting and fun exercise in getting to work with the local town government. And the surprising part about it was I was able to talk to them about everything but astronomy and how it benefited all of us as citizens and just benefited us as people, not wanting to be, dealing with blinding glare and lights trespassing into their windows at night. So I was able to get their attention through these postcards, because I think maybe of the hundreds that I handed out at these stargazing sessions, I think maybe 5 or 6 of them made it back to the Planning and Zoning Committee, and that was enormous. So, it's the kind of thing, the perceptions about, voicing your concern in a public arena, in a local government, that, you need to be inundated. But they were, quite impressed with, like I say, 5 or 6 postcards that came in. So it got the whole conversation started, and what you see here is the town of Branford's planner, Shirley Rasmussen, and zoning enforcement officer, Justine Gillen, who have both since retired. We created a system, a simple system. You see, well, to back it up a little bit, I'm all about, in what I do in design and working with communications with people, I'm all about really getting down to the core primal connection between me and who I'm trying to actually relay information to, or to do whatever I do with design. So simplifying the whole process became key to making the experience of why would somebody want to care about this be something that is in all of us. And the great thing with working with these wonderful folks in planning and zoning was we were able to sit down and talk about this just like people at a table about, okay, well, if this is a problem, how would you go about this? And they were able to educate me about how the zoning enforcement process works, and planning when people bring in lighting plans for their businesses. And so this joint communication we had going here, we were able to come up with a really nice system of a reasonable way to do this. And it wound up working wonderfully, and we got it enacted in 1997. And you can see over here, Justine on the right here is in the spirit of trying to keep everything simple, I was able to even take the lighting meter to read the actual light levels to check and see if the gas station here had actually complied with the regulations. I put it on I mounted it on a stick with a little wheel on the bottom so she wouldn't have to be going around bending over, putting the sensor on the ground. She could just wheel it around and take the readings. So facilitating ease in the way to go about having the regulation work was key. And so you wound up with, that's interesting, can I scroll this up? Doesn't seem to be centered. Is there any way to full screen this? Do we know? Oh wait, here we go, I got it. You got to two-finger it. So an example of the real-life application of what we were doing in our lighting plans. Basically, if a business needed to put in new lighting or was building a new business in general, or if they just wanted to update their lighting system outside, like this cinema in Brantford, this is what it looked like beforehand, and then after the installation of the same actual site, using full cutoff fixtures. Now we're going back a ways now, remember? So this is in the 1990s. So this is all before the LED revolution. So the full cutoff fixture was a very simple way, a simple club to use to basically take the original problem and be able to now have a clear and usable solution. Also, billboards in town for everyone that needed to be replaced. This was the original one. As you can see, the trees are helping show. This is a side view of a billboard. If it's hard to tell what it is, you're looking at it on a side angle. So you can see the actual uplight reflected in the trees. Afterwards, this is what would be installed when the lighting needed to be replaced, a top-mounted billboard, and as you can see, the highest concentration of light being focused on the actual target area, which is your surface of the billboard. And to make it a community positive effort, we basically had our astronomy club. We would come in and we would award the local businesses for the job they did on bringing this incredibly working, wonderful, and night sky friendly lighting program to their new business. And so we got a car dealership here. This was the first big, over on the left here, and this is part of the article on Sky and Telescope's website about how the car dealership, the owner even states that he was concerned that it was going to be, something where this place would be too dark, people would be afraid to come to his car dealership. But then when it was installed and you realize that, wow, your eye wants to look into this area because there's no glare, and that he was now using a fraction in electricity of what he would have normally been using had there been no law giving him a guideline as to how to install the lights. And this is a fast food gas station type thing on the right here, which you see all the smiles, everybody's happy, good PR. Okay, so we wanted to take, I say we, now I've worked with some wonderful people in this organization over the years. Locally, Leo Smith, who's right here, and Cliff Haas over on the left there. This is shots of us actually proposing a law for the state of Connecticut to actually shield the floodlights, because we had, and we still do now, we still have floodlights all over the state of Connecticut, utility pole mounted in the state right of way, but we were able to make it the case, and you can see one of the most effective parts of this presentation we gave before the legislative office crowd there, bringing my clip-on light, which is also in the Sky and Telescope article. This was the goal of this was, of course, to bring the experience of what glare is to the audience who you're trying to talk to. Because we all hate glare. Glare is not good for anybody. You don't have to care about the stars. You don't have to care about anything aside from, turn that thing off, it's killing me. And that was like the closing part of this whole presentation we gave. And we had a lot of luck working with the state and getting those laws passed for streetlights as well as floodlights because of these very simple, effective presentations. Okay, thank you. As a result, here you can see the before and after streetlights before as they got replaced to the full cutoff style. Floodlights, very important one. Leo and I and Cliff was a help somewhat on this, where we were able to actually address these extremely disabling floodlights along roadways because they were really technically a public hazard, shining in the eyes of drivers going along the roadways. Didn't even have to bring up the stars. All along in my efforts, people would say, well, I go to Home Depot, I go to Lowe's, there's nothing available for the homeowners. I walk down the aisle and the motion sensors come on and I'm like, whoa, what did I do? And being hit with all these things you could buy for your house all mounted on a wall, but none of them were shielded. So I thought, oh yeah, how hard would it be to become a manufacturer? So the Glare Buster, yeah, there you go. The Glare Buster was our baby. We created a homeowner light to take the place of floodlights that go on everyone's house. So it was a great success in the sense of getting out the idea. But we were so far ahead of the curve, boy, I tell you. Woo! There once was a sky full of stars, as Kelly mentioned in the. This is another part of my effort in raising awareness is basically getting the simple message that a child can understand about that lighting doesn't belong up in the sky. There's a better way to do it. And through this simple rhyming bedtime story, I was able to relay the concept of the importance and the wonder of the night sky and how it's for all of us. This is still on the IDA's website, and Susan Harder graciously mentioned this too. This was the most effective part of the Brantford lighting law because of its simplicity. Basically, these fixtures don't work, these fixtures do work. And we're at a point now where this is going to have to evolve because of LEDs. LEDs now, if you compare what a flat lens LED was yesterday to now, where you've got diodes mounted on the bottom of a fixture, it becomes a little bit more difficult to shield that way. So these are some of the challenges we're facing in modern LED fixtures. They're great, they're energy efficient, they're really good environmentally that way, but we have high angle glare in the street lights, and as in the new they work so hard on this. If you're familiar with this, the bug rating system, which is part of the model lighting ordinance between the IES and the IDA, where you can determine your areas of where the high angle glare is and uplight and so forth by these different sections of well, you can see right here, the green area being the forward glare. This is where there's a big difference in modern lighting and how we're going to have to look at regulation from this point out, is because LEDs now create a much higher angle glare point, even with flat lens type fixtures. So these are some of the challenges that we need to face, and it's the ever-evolving part of regulation. Most light fixtures in LED are default, as we've talked about in the last session, the color of the sun practically now, high blue. So our physiology is saying, as the AMA report, is that this is not something we really should be having in high volumes in our night environment. But you can see as real life examples, there is a lot of this out there. And this is even in the town of Branford, where we have these regulations, because now we've got new people in the offices of planning and zoning. So these are the challenges that are facing us today. We got to now consistently evolve with what these changes in lighting products are, and this what we've all been talking about, the color of the light as well, because this is very, very important. So I'm not saying any of this to discourage you. These are just the things that now we have to take lighting regulation to in our modern times, because we all want to have that beautiful night sky and Milky Way for all our children and grandchildren from here on out. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. You know, we're doing this all on social media, and it's streaming live on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and search on IDA Boston 2017. That's also our Twitter hashtag. Speaking of Twitter, Gwen Melnick and Lichthinder are in the lead in terms of tweets. Headlands, you got to get going here, okay? There's a hat at stake for you. The number of people following us on Twitter on YouTube right now is about 25. We need to get that up to 50. So let's go out there, get those keyboards going. Our next speaker, so we're gonna migrate from the very small to the medium to the very large. Our next speaker is Glenn Heinmiller, who's a principal at the lighting firm locally here in Cambridge of Lamb Partners. He chairs the IALD, that's International Association of Lighting Designers, their Energy and Sustainability Committee. He manages IALD's contribution to standards and regulations. He's a lead AP and served as the U.S. Green Building Council's subject matter expert on light pollution. He is one of us. He's a good friend of the movement. He's also a NCQLP certified, you're going to have to tell us what that means, and a fellow of the International Association of Lighting Designers. He's going to explain his experience in helping with the street light change out here in beloved Republic of Cambridge. Glenn. People's Republic of Cambridge.
Thank you, Kelly. I just want everybody to know I'm wearing this scarf not as a fashion statement, just try to stay warm in here. Just advance it. No, that's not. You just advance it. There we go. Well, that doesn't look so. Okay, well, all right. A little graphic conversion problem here. That's me. As Kelly said, I'm going to talk specifically about what I think is a success story, which was the City of Cambridge's conversion of all the street lighting to LED. I was, my firm and with sort of a joint venture with Paul Letkovich at WSP were consultants to the city and basically designed the conversion for them. So since our topic is, success, I tried to think about what the sort of success, the keys to success were, our steps for success, and I'm going to talk about these 6 topics. And I also should say that this is based on a presentation, there's like a 30-minute presentation that I'm going to do in 10 minutes, so I apologize if I don't make any sense, but hopefully during Q&A you can ask me what the hell I was talking about. So we have to understand the context of Cambridge, before we talk about the conversion. It's an extremely dense city, over 100,000 people in 7 square miles, so I would venture that it's a little bit denser than Rapid City or Duluth. I've been told it's one of the densest cities in the country. So we have residential, and there's residential, and then a lot of big institutional uses. We have Harvard University, MIT, big biotech and tech in Kendall Square, and because of the density, we've got residential neighborhoods right up against commercial districts. So it creates a real challenge to light the streets and limit light pollution. The city does own all their street lighting and completely control it. And I think the other background is that, I don't know if you know Cambridge, but it's a very progressive city, and also the municipal government is pretty financially secure, let's say. So, and also the major motivation for the project was CO2 reduction. So I mean, and Cambridge just has a huge CO2 reduction goal, and they looked at street lighting and said, we need to reduce our carbon footprint every way we can. So that was actually the major driver for them to spend a lot of money on the conversion. And to pay us to help them do it right. Anyhow, we can talk about glare. So, everybody understands glare. The thing is, in a dense urban environment, glare, where there's a lot of pedestrians, glare is especially a big issue. People are out on the street, and they need to be able to see well. So that's something we looked at a lot. And we found that with LEDs, there are some sort of new glare issues introduced, and it's not so much high angle as Bob was saying, but the intensity of the actual emitters is really pretty, is something you never saw with conventional light sources. So we looked, there's some new technologies out here with waveguide technology and diffusion and things like that, which can break up the view. We looked at that, and we implemented a little bit of that in the lights we put into the park. But the big thing you want to look at is high angle luminance. High angle peak candela, and these are, I mean, you don't have to be a lighting geek to sort of see the difference between these two candle power distribution curves. And these are actually from two of the Cobra head fixtures that we evaluated. The one on the left, I believe, is the one we ended up using. The one on the right, a lighting expert can look at this and go like, that's going to be a problem. And I can tell you when we put them out on the street and looked at them, it was definitely a problem as far as glare. So that's something to be. So rules of thumb: avoid fixtures with peak candela above 70, but really, you got to go out and look at the fixtures, and you got to do in the field evaluations. And as a pedestrian walking down the street, how is this fixture going to look? Now, with that said, you stare into any street light, I don't care what it is, it's going to be glary. But there are differences when you're looking down the street between one street light and the other. Okay, light trespass. In a city like Cambridge, I really call it the street lighting. I really call it sidewalk lighting, because that's really what we're doing. We're lighting the sidewalks, and it's expected. The city is expected to light the sidewalks for pedestrians. I mean, if they didn't light the streets, there would be an uproar. But really, what we're doing, we're lighting the sidewalks where pedestrians have to be. The street kind of takes care of itself once you light the sidewalks properly. Now, on a street like this, and this is our typical, most of the street lights in the fixture in the city are mounted on utility poles on one side of the street. And in this kind of cross section, that typical street light does pretty well at lighting both sidewalks from one side without too much light trespass. But here's the thing. This is an extremely wide street, residential street for the city of Cambridge. This is very wide. So, and it's not typical at all. This is much more typical. And you can see on the picture in the lower right, you've got, the front steps coming right down to the sidewalk. So it gets harder and harder to control light trespass. And it gets worse. And it gets really bad. So this is what I call zero setback. We have two neighborhoods, older neighborhoods, North Cambridge and in East Cambridge, where you have residential buildings where the face of the building is at the back of the sidewalk. So 5 feet from the back of the pole. So it's physically impossible to light the sidewalk and not have some light in the first story windows, but you can, with proper shielding techniques, limit the amount of light going into bedroom windows. And we selected a fixture that has shielding options that can be easily applied. They can really, really give you very precise cutoff. And the beauty thing about LEDs, that's the other thing, you can get shielding cutoffs that you could never have got with conventional light sources. And it's really fantastic. And if I had 30 minutes, I'd talk to you all about how this all came about. But probably a few hundred of these shields were installed on fixtures across the city to deal with specific problems. But this shows, these were tests we did with shielding, and you can see kind of the difference in that zero setback situation with shields and without shields. Light trespass. So messages, a key to success, if you're out there, select fixtures that have good shielding options. If your city installs fixtures that don't have any way to shield them properly and you're in a dense, tight setback situation like we have in Cambridge, you're going to be in trouble. Okay, next one is don't repeat previous mistakes, specifically with overlighting. I think to me, the biggest success story was that we reduced the total amount of light generated in the city from street lighting by about 35%, just through careful design and not just repeating previous overlighting. So there were a lot of streets that, not a lot, but some streets that had 400-watt HPS Cobra heads lighting them, and it was insane. You know, we had like 10-foot candles in the street. So we got rid of all that, but that was through careful design. We analyzed every street. We came up with a set of criteria, and we classified every street and set the light levels to be appropriate. Okay, next one, decorative fixtures. The dreaded acorn. Another great thing about LED is that you can actually have these decorative fixtures with really good beam control, where that was very hard to do in the past. But you got to pick the right fixture. And if you're not careful, you'll end up with another horrible, dreaded acorn. There are several different decorative fixture types in the city. We looked at all of them, especially with the acorn. We did just paper evaluations of different options, looking at photometrics, and these are two of the acorns we looked at. And the one on the left, we didn't even bother to get a sample because that's going to be a disaster. The one on the right, I think, is the one we ended up picking. So this is the optical system for the acorn that we did select. It's called a baffled array. I don't know, can I promote manufacturers? I don't know. King Luminaire makes this. For those of you who've been in Boston from out of town and you've been walking around in Boston, you'll see this type of optical system right near here on Boylston Street, I think, in the acorn. Any acorn you see in Boston. But don't judge this based on what's in Boston, because these are where you get into the fine points. Boston uses a different version of this optic than we do in Cambridge, and I think peak candela is way too high. And Boston also, in my opinion, overlights their streets pretty grossly in a lot of locations. So come to Cambridge, come to Harvard Square or Cambridge Street, see our beautiful acorns, and I think you'll see what I'm saying. Anyhow. So the message with decorative fixtures is it's hard work to do this evaluation. We had probably 4 or 5 fixtures from different manufacturers just for the acorn out on poles on the street, so we could do side-by-side, in situ evaluations, not just looking at something on a tabletop or looking at photometric data. And you could really see the difference in glare performance and how they lit the roadway and et cetera, et cetera. And also the street lighting department could look at maintainability and how easy they were to install all that stuff. But it took a long time. It took a long time to do that. But that was part of our job, basically. Sort of related to that, second to last is pilot testing. I can't stress the importance of doing pilot testing. And that pilot testing means more than just like putting one fixture out on a pole, but like doing a whole street and leaving it up there for 6 months. Well, you might not have 6 months, but for a month or something. You get community feedback, and you'll learn a lot about how the fixtures work, and you're going to install a bunch. So the street lighting people are going to understand how to install them. Now, these days, with so much more LED convergence happened, maybe it's not as important as it was for us in Cambridge years ago, because these pilot tests were done before we even started the conversion project. They were done by the city, I think probably starting in 2012, I think. So I mean, Cambridge was pretty much like an early adopter here, but it's important to do this testing, because the last thing you want to do is get 10,000 fixtures installed and find out you picked the wrong fixture, because at that point there's no turning back. These fixtures are going to last for, forever, basically. I mean, that's the other thing about LED is great, is highly reliable. I think there've been practically 0 failures in the last 2 years this stuff's been out there. But that also means that there's not going to be a lot of need to replace it. So this stuff, what goes in now, is what we're going to be living with for a long, long time. Last but not least, I'm probably run over my time here, but adaptive dimming. this is the really, really cool part of the Cambridge project, is that we install an adaptive dimming system. So every fixture is, it's a wireless mesh network, and every fixture is controlled wirelessly, and its light level, its output can be set for anywhere from full to down to about 15% output. All 7,000 fixtures. As far as I know, it's still the largest adaptive dimming system, street lighting system in the country installed. I'm sort of surprised that that's still the case, but and maybe not be if someone knows of. Wellesley, yeah.
Right now, replacing 3,000 lights.
With adaptive dimming?
Yep.
Great.
We're doing a test right now.
Great. I'm waiting for, to hear that Houston or something. But anyhow, so what is adaptive dimming? It's the idea that later in the evening, you can reduce the light levels because you have lower pedestrian activity. You're basically reclassifying the street. And this concept is supported by the IES and RP8. And also, if you really want to get into it, there are 2 federal highway publications that explain exactly how this works and gives you guidelines for designing an adaptive roadway lighting system and establishing criteria. So it's a supported concept, and it's doable. We've proven that. So how does it work in Cambridge? So basically at 10 p.m., the light levels are cut in half across the city. Some Mass Ave and stuff we do at midnight. But pretty much you can go out on the street, and if any of you were in Cambridge tonight with your cell phone at 10 p.m., you stand on the street, you'll see the lights dip, and they don't fade slowly, they just go boop. And they've been doing that for the last couple of years. So that's what happens, and so that means you've just cut your energy use in half and your light pollution in half, in simple terms. So so we save energy, obviously, and that was the major motivation to do this. And we reduce light pollution. Great, comes along with it. But there are other things. Is that an adaptive dimming system gives you the ability to adjust the light levels going forward. If you decide that, well, maybe criteria change. Maybe the IES RP8 comes out in the next couple of years and says we don't have to have such high light levels, or maybe your community just decides we don't need as much light. We want to turn the lights down. If you don't have a dimming system, you're stuck with whatever you just put in when you did the conversion. That's the light level you're going to be living with for the rest of your life probably. So that's to me what's really exciting about it, is we have the ability to adjust the light levels going forward, and you can have tune across. Maybe we could have a dark sky night. Who is doing the dark in Rapid City, and I could call up Steve, the city electrician, and from his laptop at home, he could log into the system and turn off every streetlight in the city. Which is a scary thought. I don't know if he probably wouldn't do that if I called him, but it's possible because we have the ability. So people say, well, you can't do that. People will freak out because it's going to be dangerous because you just cut the light levels in half. It'll be too dark. People won't be able to see. So a question for the audience. How many phone calls, when the system started operating and the lights were cutting the light level in half at 10 o'clock, how many phone calls do you think, or complaints the city got, or phone calls to the police? Oh my God, the lights just went out. I don't know what's going on. How many, what do you think? Out of 100,000 residents? 0. You've heard this talk before. 0, as far as I know, 0. So, when we designed the system, we thought that probably what would happen, the way it works is the lights come on at 70% of full output, so we have some headroom for possibly actually increasing the light levels. And we thought that what would happen is we'd get everything installed, and then the police department would say, well, there's this street over here where we've had a lot of crime or whatever, so can you turn the lights up? No, nobody's ever asked for that. So, and of course, as I said, this idea is supported by IES and by the Federal Highway Guidelines. So, you can do it. Now, what keeps you from doing it? It costs money. Cambridge, when we did it a couple years ago, was about $150 a fixture. So that's, yeah. Now, it's probably less now. Don't freak out. Now, if your energy costs go down because of it, in the case of Cambridge, it would have been about a 4-year payback. That's pretty good. That's great. And electricity is very expensive here in Massachusetts, in case you hadn't realized. But the problem is the utilities will not recognize the dimming. So Cambridge pays as if every fixture was running, because these are the unmetered fixtures, the 5,000 unmetered fixtures. They pay as if the fixture was running at full output all night. So this is a big problem across the country with getting these dimming systems installed, because if there's no cost savings payback, then it's really a hard sell. And so I know there's a lot of move to try to get the utilities to create tariffs that recognize the dimming. And then Kelly's probably telling me I should shut up, so okay. Oh, controls ready. So the thing is, if you can't afford to do the dimming system, you can put in fixtures that are like, remember cable ready TV? Those are, that's like controls ready fixtures, which is a special socket for the dimming node and a dimming driver. And that's like zero cost. That's like no cost. And then you can add the controls later. So anyhow, done.
Great, thank you. That's great. Thank you very much, Glenn. It's a great story. And please do go to Cambridge. The restaurants don't cost as much as they do here. Okay. So we're going to move to the very large now with Debbie Moran, who's a former violinist with the Houston Symphony Orchestra and a lifelong amateur astronomer. She succeeded in convincing her subdivision, which is within the city limits, to allow fully shielded decorative streetlights. Her battle to move Houston away from 4,000K LED streetlights is still in progress, and she's here to show us the scars that she has endured during that fight. Please welcome Debbie Moran.
So, can you hear me? Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be among my people. So a lot of this, I think, is politics and business incentives. I'll get into that. As far as first of all, I call myself the black sheep of lighting advocacy because all of the people I was communicating with this year have succeeded, at least to some extent, in their cities: Phoenix, Honolulu, Chicago. I have not yet. On the you do have an older version. Okay, that's the aesthetic space photo. This is the more recent photo, or different photos. You can see, I don't know, do I have a cursor here? Yeah, you can see Houston over here. It's worse than Dallas and Fort Worth put together. So it's a tough nut to crack. Having said this, I don't think it's in my presentation. I did want to let you know that in the last 10 years, the personal and business lighting has improved. There's much more IDA-like lighting in Houston than there used to be. However, LED is so horrible that there's also a lot more high glare LED pointed outward, which is overwhelming what the people are doing it right are doing. Since this is the older version. Okay, this is the street light we got in Woodside. It was not the subdivision board that was in the way, it was the city of Houston. They were actually not allowing any type of full cutoff decorative light. And it seemed to be due to their luminance calculations. If you called the Public Works Department, they said, oh, we're fine with it, but CenterPoint won't allow it. If you called CenterPoint, they said, we're fine with it, but the city of Houston won't allow it. Finally realized it had something to do with the luminance calculations they were insisting on and the number of poles that CenterPoint was willing to maintain. I'm very glad to see Nancy Clanton here because I searched the internet all over the place for what do you do if you have to choose between glare and uniformity. I mean, everywhere I looked it said you want no glare and you want good uniformity. I'm like, what if the pole spacing does not allow both? So I finally found Nancy Clanton's 2006 Colorado Department of Transportation lighting guidelines where you have a discussion of that and brought that in. And I also got the key words, which, since I'm not a lighting engineer, from Cindy Luongo Cassidy, small target visibility. Now, I actually did not win on that fight. We use the broken record method of complaining, which is actually an official method of complaining. I've used it successfully several times, and I am definitely high intensity right now in it, as long as the city is saying no. We actually did not succeed in changing calculation method, but they said, let's see, I have different slides on this one. But what they did say was that if we paid for our own lighting analysis, and we actually used the same firm the city uses, and if it passed their luminance calculation methods, they would allow us to have full cutoff lighting, and it could only be us, and nobody else could get it. That's essentially what happened. It actually passed their calculation method, illuminance, and they said, oh, that's the same it would have been if you had had the semi-cutoffs. Now, we did not succeed on the south side. The south side still has bad lighting. I got much better board support than even before. We had a 3 year delay before doing the north side. Tried again, because there was a full cutoff version of the same light, and this time we got it. And I am happy. Oh, wait a minute. Let me show you in this photo. Oh, I don't have my circled photo. This is still an older version. All right, so I'm going to use the cursor. Let me see if I can find the area. Okay. I think it's this there. I don't see it on this side. But I wanted to show you, right here. Okay, so this is the area that got, I don't know if it shows up very well, also asked for dark sky lights. So there's 525 high pressure sodium acorn lights there. There's an area here which is outside the city of Houston, it's West University, which is fighting the lights at the same time. They fought Centerpoint for 5 years, and Centerpoint finally said they had to stockpile their own lights, and they actually, before us, got what looks like full cutoff. There's technically cutoff lights. So you can see how much that darkens. All the other darker areas on this slide are basically city parks. My area is actually underneath the 500, so this little tiny dot, that's my success of true full cutoff decorative lights. But what I'm happy to report is that since then, 7 years later, several subdivisions, all three bordering us, are going to have street reconstruction, and all three of them have asked for a full cutoff light. In fact, they said we want it to be like Woodside and West University. Those are the two lighting committees that had amateur astronomers on their committees who understood IDA lighting principles. So once it's seen, people preferred that to what the city puts in. Okay, now on to LED lighting. This actually kind of segued because I was going back for meetings to see if we could somehow make it not like pulling teeth for other subdivisions to get this kind of lighting. And the Office of Sustainability told us, well, you're going to be thrilled, we're about to get LED lighting, and it's going to be full cutoff, and it's going to be 4,000 K. Now, I had heard an IDA talk about 10 years earlier that said we are concerned that cities are going to start putting in LED before the warm technology has matured. And that's exactly what's happening. And so I wrote my first letter then. There was not a single installation at the time. They said, well, we want the 4,000 K. I was talking about maybe residential areas being better. No, we want it to be the same throughout the city. And it was actually quite a while later that I physically saw the first light. There was a small area near me that had street reconstruction, and they had the first LED lights. Far worse than I had anticipated. Very high glare, very shallow cutoff, exactly what you were talking about. And I'll have some pictures of that in a minute. And so I did my first city council appearance at that time. And I thought I would succeed. I went in with an article about Las Vegas City Council regretting their 4,000 K choice. We had consulted with Las Vegas and Los Angeles, and also about Davis, California's story. If all I heard at first was positive, yes, we would like to take another look at this. Please send us melatonin studies. And then I found that nothing was happening. A few months later, our supportive city council member called me and said that our mayor, Anise Parker, she's on the list of top 10 mayors, very progressive, has done a lot to green the city of Houston, but she was dead set against tampering with the LED lights. This was her major accomplishment. So I was told, wait for the next election. So Here's a meantime, I don't know if this is showing up over there, but more white LEDs are going in. The full cutoff LEDs are about as bad as the non-cutoff high pressure sodium we used to have. The bright knots along the freeways are actually business lighting. We still have high pressure sodium on the freeways. So the Department of Energy is right. That's actually the worst of all, is really bad business lighting. So this is after 2 years of asking for a test on my street for warmer lighting, I was one of the first to get the new 4000K LED. This is the view from my front bedroom. This is just a cell phone photo, but that's the degree of annoyingness of a 45-watt light which is full cutoff, not very good backlight control. This is before my house side shield. From across the street, I now have a house side shield. My house looks pretty dark. This is what the person across the street sees. There's no house side shield for that to help someone across the street. So I noticed that the bedroom windows were open for quite a while, and I asked that finally the mother came out. I said, "Are your kids actually liking this? This is like a night light for them?" She said, "Oh no, that's the children's bedrooms. They've moved to the back of the house, and I would be happy to sign something for better street lights." So in the meantime, I got onto Nextdoor, and because I could educate thousands of people in 16 neighborhoods at once, and I met a realtor named Cheryl Israel there, not an astronomer, and she suggested I start a petition, so I did. One thing I did not anticipate is that my politically conservative friends, which are many, and even amateur astronomers would not sign a change.org petition because it has a progressive reputation. And so I made sure they all knew how to unsubscribe and got more signatures. But even the amateur astronomy community was not signing it. I was amazed. But one good thing is through the petition, I met Jonathan Day, or Jonathan C.C. Day, because there's another Jonathan Day there, who is a lawyer, contacted me through the comment section, and I found out that one of his areas of expertise was in government relations. I felt like I had hit the jackpot. He is standing here in front of his house in the Heights. This picture is taken by his 6-year-old son. He wrote me before he got his light. This is actually across the street. And his son cried the day they got their light, and he calls them "you're going to jail lights." I like that. But anyway, I met Jonathan Day just in time for the new mayor's term. So we were there January 6, 2016, when Mayor Sylvester Turner was elected as his first public comment session. Cindy Longo Cassidy wrote me that, hey, Bill Wren, who's known for his work in West Texas for oil rig lighting, is going to be in town. And actually not in town, he's going to be in San Antonio, but that's practically the neighborhood when you're coming all the way from West Texas. So he came all the way in to speak at the city council, and I spoke, and Jonathan Day spoke, and we used this photo, not a great photo, but it's the only before and after photo I could find of any sort of white, going from whiter, higher glare, that's metal halide, to 3000K LED. This is a street in Germany. I'm hoping that's overexposed on the right, but it shows the concept that if you shield the light better, have lower glare, you actually have the appearance of more uniformity. So we actually were successful. The mayor ordered a Public Works and Centerpoint to do a review, see what it would cost to change the lighting to lower glare, warmer lighting. And that's when our troubles began. So 2 weeks later, Centerpoint Energy came out with a report based on 70 lumens per watt instead of what the efficiency had just been improved at that time. And we were using Cree lights. Cree had gone up to 115 lumens per watt with some of their 3000Ks. And they said there's going to be a year delay. The fixtures are more, the LEDs are more expensive, the efficiency is less, and it's going to cost the city of Houston 20% more. Now in Houston, that's a deal killer. So because we have a revenue cap, we've been having all sorts of money problems. Then we got an NPR, we got some press in early 2016. But of the, shall I continue? But of the early press I asked for, only the local NPR station interviewed us. About 6 or 7 stories came where they only talked to the city and did not talk to us. I got a call one day, hey, your petition's on TV, and I had no idea. But at least it was aired, but they also had the city's position in there without our being able to rebut it. However, we did hear that CenterPoint Energy went ahead and tested the Cree RSW. We let them know it existed 2 months before it was announced because Chris Monrad told us, and they were really impressed. We knew about it before they did. But again, they said they would only test the 50-watt version. We have 45-watt lights now. That's pictured there as a, I hope that's as bright as it is on my screen, as a 30-watt. And nothing's dimmable, so again, we'll only test it if it means it's going to cost the city more, was basically their position. My letter writing campaign, people were getting letters back from the city saying, we're testing a warmer light, maybe in about a year it'll be ready, we're going to continue with the 4,000K. If your neighborhood wants a warmer lighting, you will have to raise the money to pay for a retrofit. 5 minutes, okay, I'm just about finished. So the 4,000K continues to be installed. Let me, there were some subsequent council appearances. What I want to discuss is some of the hurdles. We went out about Los Angeles, also reducing their wattage about 35%, but they don't believe me about Los Angeles. First, they didn't believe they're changing their lighting to warmer. Then they didn't believe it's for now, it's for like 10 years from now. Then when I had a more recent meeting with a city councilman who's a policeman or past policeman, he said, well, we can't be like Los Angeles, they're cash strapped. So that must have been the next line. They're cutting down on wattage because they can't afford the right lighting. It took me a long time to find good illustrations. Again, they would not come out on light tours. You're not allowed to bring a lamp to city council meetings. Seeing is definitely believing with this issue. So I had a trip to Geneva. I saw my first warm LED lighting. I'm not sure how it's appearing on the screen, but it was it's actually a little more subdued looking. This is a reasonably subdued warm white light, excellent visibility downtown. The reasons I don't think they're listening is first we have two bad forms of lighting. We never went through a flat lens Cobra version. And so people are comparing drop lens, HPS. People would call in, we have a lot of trees, so people call in when they see that first bright white light on the street and say, hey, this is great, we want more. So it's very hard to get this grassroots support from non-astronomers. They don't understand. Then in April, our position was misrepresented. They were told we were all from the Dark Sky Alliance. I actually had not mentioned astronomy. Jonathan knows nothing about astronomy. Cheryl knows nothing about it. That the IDA is completely against all LED lighting, that it would take twice as many poles. We want to spend millions of extra dollars, and that we want to completely retrofit everything that's been put in, which we've never, ever asked for. Basically, there were attempts to discredit us. So the next several times, finally wised up, the next few times I'm very organized. I sent them my handouts ahead of time, what I'm going to talk about. They were starting to get letters right before we came in saying that what we were telling them was false. So we're definitely in the fight stage you mentioned. That's where we are. In Phoenix, they thought the citizens had voted against the warmer lighting. I mean, Phoenix.gov, it shows the vote is for the warmer lighting, and a small band of amateur astronomers had changed the whole city against the will of the people. This is what I've been up against when I go into city council. Also, we know that the Public Works Department, from that April letter, has been using IES RP 805, which is a luminance calculation and not the more recent calculation method, which accounts for veiling luminance. And if someone would just stand in my front yard, they can see where I have the house side shield that yes, you do see more continuous light from my light to the next one, but the second you get out in the street, what the driver sees, it turns totally black. So they're calculating for no, they're not considering glare, they're calculating for a uniformity that's never actually seen in practice. And the way I put it is that you're paying for twice the light in order to see only half of it. That's essentially what's happening. We've had trouble getting press since then. Twice we were actually contacted, and then one time I called Channel 11 back and they said, no, we've decided not to run this story. And an NPR guy called me, he wanted like one sentence, and then he said, well, we're going to talk to other parties, and he called me back, he said, our editor has decided not to run this story. So Jonathan actually thinks we are definitely in a combative relationship. We do have a situation where the utility owns the lights. I've always thought that any gain for Houston is CenterPoint Energy's loss, and that there's got to be ways, like what they do in Cambridge. I've even suggested, well, there's enough of a savings for both the benefit, the city of Houston and CenterPoint. So let them sell less light, city still gets some savings, and then the incentive is flipped. They're selling less light for more money. And that's actually what happens in the state of Georgia, where they're putting in warmer lighting. But I do want, this is what the Hope Robinson's for, but I do want to mention before I sign off is some of the photos I've been starting to use. So here's Detroit versus Hemet, California. This is, I called Chris Monrad, that light is dimmed to only 17 watts, probably a little bit overexposed. But I went to Hemet, and yes, you can look directly at the LEDs. The shielding is, the LEDs the shield is actually slanted. The LEDs are recessed a little bit into the light, and without a house side shield, it looks like Houston with a house side shield. You do not see the LEDs from the side of the next light over when you're driving. I'm short, so I've always made that point. A short driver cannot just turn down the visor and not see a lot of LEDs from the side. I took these myself. This is hotel window views from Dallas and Geneva, Switzerland, Tucson versus Detroit, and finally Tucson's wonderful video, and what 2700K looks like. For a long time I had to use my own home on the left. And then it occurred to me to download some Hollywood photos to get the emotional, that Hollywood has for a long time used cold lighting to evoke a sense of foreboding, not a sense of safety. So even Stranger Things is doing it. I don't know if there are any Stranger Things fans out there. So I actually now have a handout with Hollywood lighting, Detroit from the New York Times, and then Hemet, just glowing beautifully underneath all of that. That's the kind of arts or aesthetic appeal I think that can be made. And then these are just all the people who have helped me, and I will sign off. Thank you.
Sorry to rush you. Thank you, Debbie. Sorry to rush you through. Are we set with 1 minute? Okay. No, we're going to hold the questions until afterwards. I just want to remind everybody that we can, those of you who are following us on Facebook and Twitter, you can submit questions via that mechanism, IDA Boston 2017. What I would like to find out from some, well, they're preoccupied there. Do you think we can extend past 5 or? The answer is yes. Okay. All right. Post your right, what I just said. Okay. So how are we doing? They're still working on that. Okay, Susan, go ahead. I'll repeat your question. I
actually have a question for Glenn.
All right.
Because municipalities will hire an architect to design a building, but they don't hire lighting designers. How did you get that job?
All right, so let me repeat that for online. Susan asks if a company hires a lighting designer for an architect for a building, why don't they? How did you get the job of getting hired by Cambridge?
It's really unique. Mainly because our business is in Cambridge, and I've lived there 35 years, and Cambridge, like I said, is a very progressive city that had already done a street lighting before they even funded the conversion. They'd done a lot of studies with Paul Lekovich and hired him, and so it is a unique situation. Now, frankly, I don't know. Well, you should also ask the question of Paul Lekovich, because his firm does do design work consulting for around the world, but it's true. It's not. It was a situation unique to the city of Cambridge, I think. Yeah, and because you have to find a city that's got the financial resources and owns their own street lighting and has the vision to say we want to do the right thing.
Okay,
that's pretty.
I'm going to jump in or jump back in. So we're going to try something dramatic here. Our next speaker is not here. She's in Spain. And so we're... España. Sí. Lo siento. Okay. So we'll have to figure out how we're going to advance the slides. But anyway, our next speaker is Susana Malion. How am I doing? No, okay. Susana has a degree in physics and physics of excellence by the Official Association of Physicists, a master's in environmental engineering, and a master's in astronomy and astrophysics. That's got me beat. For more than 13 years, she's been working in the field of public lighting, energy efficiency, light pollution, and protection of the environment and the night sky in her home country of España. And so I'm trying to figure out how her voice is going to come through the PA system, and is it up to me to advance the slides? She's sharing her screen. Oh, she's going to share her screen. Excellent. All right, Susana, it's all yours. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you and see you.
Sí, perfecto. Good night for everyone from Spain. First of all, I want to thank to International Dark Sky Association. One moment. Okay. One moment. Okay. To invite me to participate in your annual meeting. It's my pleasure to be here on the internet. And well, first of all, I want to like to apologize in advance for my English. So I hope you can understand.
Susanna, I don't know who you're listening to, but go ahead, please.
¿Sí? ¿Ahora me estáis oyendo? Vale, empiezo. Ok. ¿Habéis oído al principio o no? Oh. Can I start? Yeah. See? Okay, I'm going to talk about other lighting projects and master plans with which we have carried out in different dark sky territories, following the no light pollution criteria, which is more demanding than Spanish regulation to respect the environmental condition at night, reducing light pollution, saving energy, and ensure the safety of people, drivers, and pedestrians, of course. Okay, the first territory is Guadalajara. It's a dark sky place located in the east of Spain, very near to Teruel and Valencia in Aragon region, and includes 5 villages of Valencia region. In this territory is the Observatorio Astrofísico de Jabalambre and Galactica Center for Astronomy Education and Outreach located in the village. Okay. I'm talking. Hello?
Yes.
Hola, ¿no me oís? cosa más rara.
IDA Boston 2017.
It's kind of like what Mission Control in Houston was going through when connecting with the astronauts.
Sí, es que estoy hablando pero no me oís. Sí, es que es una cosa muy rara. Ah, por eso. Vale, pues es que no me acuerdo dónde iba. Vale, vale. Vale, 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 vale. Venga, sigo entonces. ¿Cuelgo? Ok. The astronomical observatories of Valencia University, or La Cambra, and the Valencian Astronomical Association in the village of Aras de los Olmos in Valencia. And the last territory is Trebinka, in the municipality of Abeiga, in the north west of Spain. In the Galician region. There is no professional astronomy activity for the moment, but a company has been created to develop astrotourism with great results for the moment. Okay, the main objective is to analyze the outdoor lighting installation, performing detailed lighting, electrical, and energy audits, and draft the master plan to fulfill Spanish regulations. But to carry out these goals, we have to go ahead following the no light pollution criteria, which is more demanding than the Spanish regulation, as said. Second, to promoting energy efficiency, achieving the maximum saving and improved lighting performance, and finally comply with the conditions of darkness of the environment and night in these territories, since they are located in exceptional places for the astronomy activity, and it's very important that politicians, business associations, and new entrepreneurs have opted for the astronomical tourism. The lighting master plans begins with an audit or a detailed study of outdoor lighting installations in an energy, lighting, and electricity way, and from the results set solutions or measures in favor of energy saving and night responsible outdoor lighting. Okay. These audits, following the Spanish Lighting Committee protocol, includes a complete inventory of the whole of the lighting installation. I mean, as luminaries, lamps, auxiliary equipment, electrical cabinets, dimming luminous flux devices, the safety installation, etc. And each component of the installation is geographically positioned in a full map with different layers of information using a geographic information system. Here we can see the light points inventoried with all their technical specification, luminary model, type of lamp, power, upward light output radio, the lamp's effectiveness, lumen per watts radio, efficiency luminaries, photometry, etc. In Aras de los Olmos, for example, 82% of lamps have an important energy emission in the blue and ultraviolet part of the spectrum, so they are unfriendly, obviously, with the night time, as we know. Especially mercury vapor lamps that are forbidden in Spanish regulation because of its low effectiveness, obviously. The other 18% are high pressure sodium vapor lamps that are no polluting, but nowadays have been surpassed by LED in terms of efficiency. And in respect to luminaries, 57% of them pollute. The emission of light in all directions and toward the superior hemisphere and facade can be observed, which makes obviously a minimal utilization factor of the installation. I mean, the percentage of the light flow that the luminaries emits and that reaches the ground is minimal. The next step is to analyze the electrical energy consumption of outdoor lighting installation through contracts with the power company. And for each electrical cabinets, so from this analysis, the consumption of kilowatts per hour per inhabitants in a year can be obtained. In Aras de los Olmos, for example, it was 305 kilowatts hour per inhabitants and per year, when the main energy consumption in Spain is about 116. Obviously, there is a lot of room for improvement, and to save energy is possible by reducing power lamp and changing the technology, as we will see ahead. It's also mandatory to measure levels in the streets, illumination levels in the street of the municipality. In our case, we have a special device for this purpose with 3 light meters and a specific software device to obtain the average level of illuminance in the ground and the uniformity, I mean the transition from light to dark areas. This map represents the actual illumination levels on the streets of the village measures in lots. According to Spanish regulation, there are areas over-illuminated, but above all with poor lighting due to type of light points with very low luminous efficiency, mainly mercury vapor levels, lamps. So after the first phase of recopilation on information and measurements, we had to do the initial diagnosis, taking into account the lighting needs in each street of the village, depending on the velocity, capability, I mean the number of vehicles, pedestrians, characteristic of the street, etc. And finally, the classification in E-zones, depending on the degree of protection against light pollution. And it's essential to perform it correctly, to ensure that the new luminaries that are going to be installed hasn't got an upper hemisphere flow, or it will be close to zero. Obviously, in these projects, the areas are defined as E1 with less than 1% of Euro. Also, the new LED technology allows any fixture to have less than 3% of Euro if installed in the right way in the street, of course, okay? In this summary table, we can see the different types of light points, the number of each one, their Euro, and finally the evaluation, taking into account the classification as E1. For example, Ara de los Olmos, in Aras de los Olmos, 82% of the lamps points were pollutants because of mercury vapor lamps and ULOR above 1%. Continuing with the evaluation of outdoor lighting installation, the over-illumination and the energy efficiency target is shown in this chart for each street individually and in the whole of the municipality. In this case, for example, 14% of the streets are over-illuminated, and 73% of the streets have a low energy efficiency with energy level from C to G. Okay. Finally, after taking measurements, analyzing data, and evaluating the results, following Spanish regulation, the action plan or master plan is drafted of the outdoor lighting installation with the aims of searching for maximum energy efficiency, lighting adaptation, savings, safety, and light pollution, of course, measurements, measure management, maintenance, schedule, and municipal ordinance, scientific activity, in the area, astronomical observatories, and a rural develop in this territory in an astronomical tourism. Okay, we say here in Spain, green job, empleo verde. Okay, and how is it possible to achieve it? Obviously, adapting light levels by calculating using a specific software like Dialux. For example, regulation of the light's flow and power using dimming drivers with almost 5-step or regulations. Luminaries with ULOR close to zero, reducing the amount of the light of the luminous flux directed toward the upper hemisphere. LED are able to decrease, obviously. And finally, I think it's the best, the more important thing right now is the lamps with warm color temperature under 2,200 degree Kelvin. The LED PC amber is the best solutions, and
Ok, vamos a tratar algo diferente aquí. Okay. Ah, vale.
Go ahead, Susana.
Yeah. Habla Susana, que estamos haciendo algún truco acá.
Ah, vale. Es que no sé por dónde iba.
Ya hay que, si quieres puede wrap up, coge como un
¿Es la
minuto
gráfica?
más tu wrap up para terminar.
Vale, pongo, ok, ok, a ver, ¿por dónde? Ok, sorry, aquí, this is an example of PIC AMBA install, it's a reality, okay, in Aras de los Olmos. In the end, pollution went down to a minimum with practically all the streets having maximum energy efficiency and 68% energy saving with an adequate illumination level on the ground. This is another slide of another street in the center, okay? This is a picture before the change. The light pollution levels were between 21.4 to 5. And we can see the intrusive light of the facade, the glare of the white lamp. And after the first phase, light pollution levels have gone up towards.
Aquí te están aplaudiendo.
Ah, vale. Genial.
Ya. Dale rapidito, que hay que terminar. Ya.
Vale, perfecto, perfecto. This is another example in Arcos de las Salinas with PC Ambar. Apériga is the same. Okay. On the left, the old polluting luminary, and on the right, the new luminary with an filter amber. And finally, I think that turn off the light is not the solution. Nowadays, we have the best technology in an efficient and no polluting way, but we have to do it right, because not everything is right, okay? And finally, as Sten said, I will say in Spanish, hay una fuerza mucho más, hay una fuerza motriz más grande, ¿no? que el gas, la electricidad y la energía atómica, que es la voluntad. Entonces, good outdoor lighting installation and dark sky at the same time to everyone, and thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, aquí están todos los
Great, thank you, Susana.
Quédate en la línea.
So what we're going to do is, if any of you have questions for Susana, because obviously it's a very successful case, we're going to hold those and kind of collect them into one little bundle so that she can answer them all at once, okay, if you will. I want to remind those of you who are on Twitter and Facebook to submit questions, and we will try to handle them. We're going to go until about 5:15 to allow about 15 minutes for questions here because we have had a lot of presentations.
The home office, so to speak.
Okay, next question right here in front.
Hi, for all three of you. One of the problems in my small town here in Massachusetts was the difficulty in finding good fixtures that were that satisfied all what we know are the right criteria from all the lists that the city was required to use. They're required to choose from the qualified product list of the Design Lighting Consortium, and I spent many hours, and the city spent many hours combing through it, and their contractor spent many hours, and they couldn't come up with anything that had low enough glare to make us happy. What's your answer?
Well, my answer is that's a problem. And, if the city, if the utilities own the street lighting, you don't have as much control. If the city owns their own street lighting, as we did in Cambridge, you have total control. So it's a problem. I think it's also a pushback to the manufacturers to produce the products that we need. But you bring up the QPL and the DLC and stuff. That's another thing too, because even in Cambridge, we had to make sure that the fixtures we used would qualify for rebates, because there's big money back in Massachusetts for energy incentives. So on the Acorns, we wanted 3K on the Acorns, but the efficacy was lower, and we had hit a 70 lumen per watt thing. We had to go back, the manufacturer had to go back and re-engineer the fixtures so we'd meet that efficiency threshold so the city would get back significant money. I mean, I think that the incentive money on maybe it was just on the Cobra heads, the first payment was like $800,000. So, you know, you got to make sure you're getting that. That's why you have to pick from the QPL list, I believe.
I'm going to interject here. Pete, I see you in the back. Does the FSA listings do we do street lights in addition to just regular ordinary lights? And if somebody from a town who wanted to go find, really good quality street light fixtures, would we have the answer for them?
Yes, we do have them. There's a street and area lights alone. There's probably 200 that are available that certified, and each of those LEDs that I've known do come with the 7-pin availability. Not the old 3, which is what you want to get, the 7-pin, which has the potential for those controls, even though they don't require them for initial operation.
So there's your answer. If you can't afford your own lighting designer, go to the IDA website. Yes, I saw a question over here somewhere. No? Yes? Wait, Paul Vallely has a question. I thought there were two microphones. We were down to one. Go ahead. Paul?
Thanks, Paul Vallely again. First, Bob Krillin, I've had your glare buster now for 20 years. It's still on the original spiral fluorescent.
You know, I've heard that story from a lot of people. Thank you. Thank you so much.
For Glenn, what happened with the bridge on Ellsworth Parkway? The glare is just, for my eyes, it's horrible.
Yeah, I don't know how it is in other states. That's state. That's MassDOT. So we have streets going, well, sort of around Cambridge, through Cambridge. They're actually state controlled. The city doesn't control. So we had nothing we could do about that.
Okay. And for your engineers, there's a LED out directly across from Alwise Station, which I noticed last night. It was flickering on and off, on and off. That was about 5:30, 6 p.m.
Other questions? Yes, over here. Wait, I'm sorry. I'm going to defer here because you had your hand up before. Go ahead.
Thank you. Glenn, can you speak, it's one thing to talk about city or town lighting. Can you speak to municipal lighting of playing fields, et cetera, in tightly abutted neighborhoods? Because I live in Watertown next to Cambridge. We have CDM Smith designing, we have Musco coming in with their big lights, and yet you really wonder a reality check of how much lighting is needed and all that kind of stuff, because the glare there again is intense for tightly abutted properties in these little tiny cities around Boston. My question clear enough for you?
Well, I mean, so it's tough. It's tough. If you're going to light a sports field to meet, IS criteria, and you've got houses next door, you're going to have light trespass. And the best thing you do is to have somebody like Musco come in and do it, have reasonably well shielded fixtures who pay attention to that stuff. And you still may not like the results. The other thing to do is make sure the lights are shut off when nobody's around. I mean, this is the thing I see, is the sports field lighting on. The players have gone home and the lights are still on. I believe in Cambridge, I think Steve has got nodes on the sports lighting controller, so he can put them on our wireless dimming system.
I know, they want to show off the fields.
But,
Brad, are you here? All right, so she needs your help.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yes, go ahead, Deanna.
Okay, I have a question for Bob.
Yes.
So this graphic that you created, that is like in almost every ordinance out there.
Thank you.
So are you going to create a next generation of graphics anytime soon?
Yeah, why not? The thing is that I think we're in the evolution stage right now. This gentleman's point about, what's available, there's not a lot available. And then, of course, Pete has scoured and found everything that is wonderful out there and applicable. I think we're in this in-between with the LEDs now being so improved to be maximum efficiency, and then you've got a lot of jumpers on of manufacturers who are just making floodlights loaded with these, 4,000 to 6,000 K bulbs in them, and so there's a product-driven problem, and you've got to now be very selective in how you pick. So it's probably going to be, it's probably going to be easy to show a lot of what is not great, but we got to kind of, in my perspective, like the original full cutoffs, we've got to figure out what this new default light fixture is that is going to be a pretty safe bet when it comes time to show what is good, because now with the ability of the diodes to be right up against the surface of a flat lens fixture, you have that high angle glare, and even though someone said, well, that's what you want, all the light is going down, you have the problem that's going to create disabling glare as well as light trespass. So I think we're not exactly to that point yet of where a fixture comes out of the box where you've got an absolute, as close to foolproof thing. That's what we need. We need a selection of those, and that's the next generation that the IDA can help drive the manufacturing side to do this. But I am game to be able to certainly illustrate that, because we do need to update that chart. That chart is now showing all old technology fixtures. And
all right, Bob, you're on. I have a Debbie. Go ahead.
Yeah, could I say something? Because I've been consulting, Jim Benya and Chris Monrad have been helping us for a long time. One thing I noticed is that even with a bad LED design, there are still, and in terms of color and intensity, you can still improve it dramatically. The Shell stations in Houston are switching to warm LEDs. You can look directly at the LEDs without pain compared to the white LED Shell stations. And so even within the same fixture, you can cut down on the color and the intensity and still have plenty of light, at least according to all the dimming studies I saw.
I would like to follow up, Debbie, with a question. You mentioned that Jim and Chris Monrad have been helping you. Strikes me that one of the things you're lacking in your battle is somebody that, with sufficient lighting gravitas to counter all of these fictitious claims. Do we need to start a Kickstarter campaign to get Nancy Clanton or Jim Benya to come to Houston?
Jim Benya's written them 3 times. Bob Gent wrote them twice. I have a lighting architect who wants to go meet with Public Works. All of our meeting requests have been denied.
Maybe we need the the chief lighting DPW person from Phoenix to come visit you. All right, go ahead. Right, we're only going to take 2 more questions because unfortunately we're really running late. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add, when I totally agree with Debbie that yes, we can change the color temperature, get rid of some of the blue, we can reduce the intensity, but in our community we go one step further, and we require that almost all of the LEDs that appear to be, flat lenses, that they have a shield on them so that they cannot be seen from another, you can't see the source of that light from another property. We have required it enough that one of our, Lithonia, you can order their, regular area street light with the dripping spring shield. But we also do a calculation that says if you are, mounted so high, so far from a property line, and the width of that LED is this width, then we can tell somebody immediately what their shield will be. We often get them to make a decision to move that light away from the property line before they install it.
Yeah, would you please hand the mic to Leo? Leo, final comment, question, and better make it impactful.
Thank you very much. This is for Glenn. I've never really checked it out, but I've heard that if bringing in an LED street light that is at what we'll call 100% output, that if you actually ordered an LED light that had more than, say, at 130% maximum output, of which
that question is yes or no. Yes, from the chip's point of view, yes, because you're running at less capacity, then your chips actually have longer life. But at the same time, you are putting a little pressure on your driver, which is you're wiggling in the whole fixture. Your driver actually is probably going to suffer.
Swap.
Drivers are there. Yeah, I would not. No, the drivers are definitely there.
Okay,
Depending on the type of driver.
that particular conversation is going to continue over beer. Before you leave, I want to thank you all, especially those who've been following us on Twitter and Facebook. And also, yeah, Susanna, we're really appreciative of your staying up late to be here with us. Gracias por su presentación. I just want to mention that at 6:30 in this room, we're going to have a conversation with authors, photographers, and filmmakers Gavin Heffernan and Harun Mehmedinovic. And they are the backers of the Skyglow project, some really eye-opening stuff. So please be here for that. That'll be a 2-hour presentation. We'll see you very soon. Thank you again for your attention.
The sun goes down every single day in cities around the world, and as day turns to night, we illuminate our cities with artificial light. Unfortunately, much of this artificial lighting is a form of pollution. This light pollution threatens our environments, energy resources, humans and wildlife, as well as astronomical research. And with cities consistently expanding, this form of pollution is progressively affecting our lives and spreading further each year. So why do I care? Well, apart from all the negative effects, the further you move away from the cities, the less light pollution there is. And the night sky, free of light pollution, with all its incredible detail. Well, that's just something you really need to experience for yourself. Life without dark skies? You don't know what you're missing.